Около меня. А не ту сторону, около. Да.
Поменялось.
Я не знаю, по-моему, başlayayım. Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli konferensiya ishtirokchilari. Tanzil Камаловна, Бейс Анварович, Бахтир Хасанович, Ильхам Атпурович, уважаемая Владимировна, госпожа Консуэла Видаль-Брус, уважаемые представители международных организаций, коллеги и партнеры из министерств, ведомств, представители средств массовой информации и гражданского общества. Сегодняшняя конференция посвящается вопросам достижения гендерного равенства в Узбекистане, обеспечения принципов достойного труда и укрепления трудовых отношений. Необходимо отметить, что эти очень важные, я бы сказал, фундаментально важные вопросы находят достойное отражение во всех важнейших и стратегически важных документах, принимаемых в нашей стране. В новой Конституции, принятой по итогам всенародного референдума апреля текущего года, гарантируются равные права и возможности женщин и мужчин в управлении делами общества и государства, а также в других сферах общественной и государственной жизни. Указывается, что каждый имеет право на достойный труд, благоприятные условия труда, справедливое вознаграждение за труд. С текущего месяца вступил в силу новый трудовой кодекс, одним из основных принципов которого является равенство трудовых прав, запрещение гендерной и любой другой дискриминации в сфере труда и занятий. Одним из основных гарантий является обеспечение равной оплаты труда мужчин и женщин за труд равной ценности. При активном участии, я бы сказал, в протекторате Танзиль Камаловны в апреле этого года Сенат одобрил поправки в законодательство Узбекистана, которые усилит защиту детей и женщин от насилия, криминализует бытовое насилие, устанавливает ответственность за домогательство и преследование. Танзиль Камаловна сама говорила на заседании гендерной комиссии, что если она сама не была женщиной и не горела бы сердцем за этот документ, то ей не удалось бы настоять на его принятии. Надеюсь, что в ходе сегодняшней встречи эти важнейшие вопросы будут подробно обсуждены, будут даны новые идеи, мысли и предложения, которые позволят нашей стране и дальше целенаправленно двигаться по пути полного достижения гендерного равенства, всемирного обеспечения принципа достойного труда и укрепления трудовых отношений во всех сферах экономики. А сейчас для приветствия участников международной конференции слово предоставляется председателю Сената Алии Маджлиса Республики Узбекистан, председателю Национальной комиссии по противодействию торговле людьми и принудительному труду Танзиль Камаловне Нарбаевой.
Ассаламу алейкум. Уважаемые гости, уважаемые участники сегодняшней конференции, уважаемая Ольга Владимировна, дорогие гости, добро пожаловать в Узбекистан. И я рада видеть всех наших коллег по работе, с которыми мы на протяжении многих лет вместе сотрудничаем и добиваемся сегодняшних результатов, и, конечно, вместе будем решать дальнейшие задачи. Я рада сегодня приветствовать всех вас от имени Сената Алии Маджлиса Республики Узбекистан, при котором действует, как сейчас Эркин Мадорбекович сказал, две комиссии, наиважнейшие комиссии для развития нашего общества. Это Национальная комиссия по противодействию торговле людьми и принудительному труду и комиссия по гендерному равенству. Эти две комиссии, деятельность этих комиссий, она тесно взаимосвязана и направлена на обеспечение равных прав и возможностей для женщин и мужчин и, конечно же, право на достойный труд, над которым наше государство работает на протяжении последних лет. В связи с этим я хотела бы выразить благодарность Международной организации труда в лице уважаемой Ольги Владимировны Кулаевой за поддержку и инициативы по проведению сегодняшней конференции и вообще за все то, что делает Международная организация труда в нашей стране, помогает, оказывает содействие нашему государству, нашему правительству в разрешении тех проблемных вопросов, выстраивании правильных направлений нашей деятельности. И мы сегодня то, чего достиг Узбекистан по вопросам достижения вот именно стандартов к достойному труду, труду, по вопросам противодействия принудительному труду, детскому труду, в этом, конечно, немаловажная заслуга и Международной организации труда. Я хотела бы сегодня обратить внимание наших национальных партнеров на практическую реализацию принципов и стандартов в области достойного труда и гендерного равенства в нашей стране. Тема сегодняшней нашей конференции, она очень актуальна. Она актуальна не только для Узбекистана, но и для всего мирового сообщества. Женщины и девочки составляют половину населения стран мира, и это равнозначно половине потенциала всего человечества. По данным Организации Объединенных Наций, сегодня женщины генерируют, то есть около 40% мирового внутреннего валового продукта. И согласно оценкам, если женщины были бы представлены наравне с мужчинами во всех отраслях экономики, то мировой ВВП увеличился бы на 28 триллионов долларов или на 26% в 2025 году. Видите, насколько важна роль женщины в развитии экономики. Именно поэтому гендерное равенство, одно из важнейших прав человека, играет ключевую роль в обеспечении мира и согласия в обществе и наиболее полной реализации человеческого потенциала, обязательно на основе устойчивого развития. Эти ваши вопросы нашли отражение и в Конституции нашей страны по итогам референдума. Народ проголосовал более 90%, вы знаете, и здесь новая Конституция провозглашает Узбекистан суверенным государством, социально ориентированным, демократическим и светским государством. И самое главное, вот именно то, что социально ориентированное государство здесь, конечно, накладывает ряд социальных и других обязательств государства перед своими гражданами. То есть государство берет ряд важнейших социальных обязательств перед своими гражданами. Кроме того, 30 апреля 2023 года вступил в действие Трудовой кодекс Республики Узбекистан в новой редакции. Трудовой кодекс страны также призван защищать интересы всех работников вне зависимости от их пола, создавать благоприятные условия труда. И некоторое время назад вопросы гендерного равенства носили, вы знаете, более декларативный характер в нашей стране. Однако в последние годы, благодаря именно политике нашего президента, тем реформам, которые осуществляются под руководством президента Шавката Мирзиёева, нами были достигнуты значительные результаты. Гендерная политика стала системообразующим фактором развития общества и государства. Такие понятия, как гендер и развитие, гендерный баланс, роль женщин в общественно-политической жизни отражаются во всех программных документах, которые принимаются у нас в стране. И они принимаются во внимание при разработке любого нормативно-правового акта. Введение обязательно гендерной правовой экспертизы законодательных актов, и не только законодательных актов на высоком уровне, но и всех нормативно-правовых актов, которые принимаются у нас в стране, создание института гендерного аудита. Вы знаете, по этому вопросу тоже был посвящен недавно принятый закон. То есть вот это все, это является ключевыми шагами на пути обеспечения гендерного равенства в нашей стране. Кроме того, недопущение гендерной дискриминации, борьба с гендерными стереотипами и создание условий достойного труда стали одним из ключевых направлений государственной политики в данной сфере. Приняты такие гендерно ориентированные законы, вам очень хорошо известны, 4 года назад, как о гарантиях равных прав и возможностей для женщин и мужчин, закон о защите женщин от притеснения и насилия, о репродуктивном здоровье. Много других таких законов были приняты, которые сегодня реализуются в жизни. Недавно мы, вот отрадное такое, знаете, новое такое явление, как Узбекистан, очень много рассматривался в критическом плане как страна, которая не криминализировала домашнее насилие. И мы, наконец-таки, сумели недавно внести изменения в действующее законодательство, то есть в 5 кодексов нашей страны, 10 законов нашей страны введены изменения, дополнения, которые криминализируют домашнее насилие. Ужесточены наказания не только в отношении женщин, кто применяет попытки насилия, издевательств, да? И это не только в отношении женщин, но и в отношении наших несовершеннолетних детей. В 2021 году, и я хотела бы сказать, что этот закон, изменения, мы разработали впервые в Узбекистане при активном участии институтов гражданского общества. Наши неправительственные организации, активисты, они активно участвовали. И я очень горда тем, что Сенату Али Маджлиса, создав при себе рабочую группу, сумел договориться и работать. Смотрели мы в одном направлении, наконец-то мы приняли эти законы. Противостояний было очень много, но мы победили. А теперь дело за реализацией этих законов. В 2021 году утверждена стратегия по достижению гендерного равенства Узбекистана до 2030 года, которая предусматривает все индикаторы, все направления по достижению в целом целей устойчивого развития, повестка 2030 года. И в данном направлении эффективно сейчас реализуется национальная программа по повышению роли женщин до 2026 года. Наряду с этим особое внимание уделяется повышению роли женщин в общественно-политической, экономической жизни нашей страны. Женщины составляют 77% занятых в сфере здравоохранения, 74% в сфере образования, 46% в отраслях экономики и промышленности. Около 2000 женщин сегодня занимают руководящие посты в государственных и общественных организациях. В целом порядка 44% всех трудовых ресурсов составляют женщины. И это, конечно, большая гордость, но мы этим еще не довольствуемся. Вы знаете, что образование – это главный приоритет, главный приоритет государственной политики нашей страны, и при этом предоставление качественного образования женщинам это является одним из основных направлений нашей государственной политики. И проводится последовательная работа по расширению доступа женщин к высшему образованию. Если 6 лет назад, обратите внимание на эти цифры, в вузах обучались 100 тысяч женщин, девушек, то в настоящее время обучается уже более 500 тысяч. Еще 5 лет назад уровень охвата девушек в системе бакалавриата был 38%, а сегодня уже составляет 49%. Охват магистерской степени увеличился с 37% до 50%. Особое внимание уделяется поддержке женского предпринимательства, поэтому это является важным драйвером экономического развития нашей страны, устойчивого развития, и поэтому этот вопрос, по нему можно провести отдельную конференцию, поэтому я не буду останавливаться здесь. Ильхам Откурович, они будут рассказывать об этом. И я хочу сказать, что центры женского предпринимательства, которые обучают наших женщин, а практически всех женщин, и успешных бизнес-представителей женщин, и женщин из этих тетрадей, да, но тем не менее эти центры, они создаются сегодня практически везде, не только в 14 регионах, но и в каждой махалле, около 10 тысяч махалле, эти центры сегодня создаются во всех махаллях, и из государственного бюджета выделяются средства на обучение женщин профессии. Отрадно, что в ходе недавно проведенной международной конференции по сокращению бедности вопросы гендерного равенства и обеспечения социальной защиты также были рассмотрены в качестве одних из элементов, которые способствуют эффективному сокращению бедности и обеспечению устойчивого экономического развития нашей республики. Данный вопрос также нашел отражение и в качестве приоритетного в повестке дня ежегодного заседания Совета управляющих Европейского банка реконструкции и развития. Вы недавно видели, были свидетелями в Самарканде. Работа с населением, анализ национальных международных экспертов показывает, но вместе с тем, что делается в стране, показывает анализ, что наряду с достигнутыми успехами нам еще предстоит сделать многое для обеспечения трудовых, социальных, иных прав женщин, расширения их экономической активности и профессионального развития. Хотелось бы остановиться на некоторых из них. Первое. Приоритетно остается, я хотела бы, знаете, почему я хочу обратить внимание на это? Сегодня все эксперты национальные, наши, международные будут останавливаться на аспектах гендерного развития в области труда, я хотела бы, чтобы вы обратили именно на эти вопросы. Что беспокоит лично меня, как председателя комиссии, как председателя Сената? Первое, это приоритетно остается продолжение работы по совершенствованию национального законодательства на предмет его соответствия самым передовым международным трудовым стандартам, в том числе путем присоединения, дальнейшего присоединения к Конвенциям Международной организации труда, которые будут способствовать дальнейшему внедрению достойных условий труда в нашей стране. Узбекистан уже ратифицировал 20 конвенций МОД. Ольга Владимировна, с каждым вашим приездом мы больше и больше ратифицируем конвенции, мы достойно выполняем обязательства, которые мы дали Международной организации труда в честь столетия его создания. И у нас есть отдельный план по ратификации конвенции МОД, и на сегодняшний день, вот буквально в прошлый месяц мы ратифицировали одну из последних, 20 конвенций на сегодняшний день, но эта работа должна быть продолжена далее нашими трехсторонними партнерами. Делать надо упор именно на те конвенции, которые направлены на социальную защиту работников и на обеспечение гендерного равенства. Второе. Необходимо осведомлять и поддерживать стремление наших граждан к достойному труду с достойной социальной защитой, включая защиту материнства. Учитывая, что в нашей стране реализуется целый ряд различных программ занятости, необходимо добиваться, чтобы создаваемые новые рабочие места в полной мере соответствовали принципам достойного труда и гарантировали социальную защиту в обязательном порядке. В этом направлении необходимо методологическое содействие МОД, в том числе в рамках совместной страновой программы достойного труда на 2021-2025 годы. Третье направление. Мы видим необходимость во внедрении принципов гендерного бюджетирования, когда при выделении государством финансовых ресурсов приоритет будет отдаваться проектам, которые бы способствовали улучшению ситуации с гендерным балансом. Для этого требуется провести анализ вклада государственного бюджета, гендерную оценку финансовой политики, а также выработать рекомендации для тех, кто формирует бюджет и на государственном, и на местном уровнях. То есть для правительства, одним словом, по внедрению конкретных инструментов в этом направлении. Пока это все делается по инициативе нашего главы государства, и пока здесь нету точного анализа и нету точных оценок, насколько гендерное бюджетирование сегодня отвечает требованиям и международным, и нашим интересам наших людей. Четвертая проблема. Нуждается в совершенствовании гендерная статистика и статистика труда, о которых, к сожалению, в настоящее время не все работодатели и работники достаточно осведомлены, имеют полное понимание. Когда мы говорим гендерная статистика или статистика труда, в основном это касается, знаете, комитета по статистике или Министерства занятости. В основном их структуры очень хорошо осведомлены. Остальные структуры, которые напрямую должны работать с этими ведомствами, они, я уверена, 100% они не полностью осведомлены о том, как должна формироваться статистика и как надо улучшать эту статистику. В этом направлении надо работать очень широкомасштабно. Пятое направление – это... Я хотела бы обратить внимание на необходимость расширения возможностей для наемного труда и поощрения формальной занятости среди женщин и мужчин. К сожалению, целый пласт работников в частном бизнесе, особенно женщины, все еще остаются в неформальном секторе, сталкиваются с такими негативными явлениями, как отсутствие социальных гарантий и достойной оплаты труда. В целях перевода работников в формальный сектор мы видим необходимость налаживания диалога трехсторонних партнеров с работодателями из частного бизнеса. Вы знаете, что частные сейчас предприятия создаются с каждым днем, их становится больше и больше. Но если организации, которые защищают интересы работников в этих частных предприятиях, это вопрос. Конечно, у нас Федерация профсоюзов, она сильная. Есть отраслевые профсоюзы, по-моему, 14 или, может быть, более сегодня их. Но, тем не менее, сколько их создано в частном секторе? Есть ли профсоюзные организации в частном секторе или другие организации, которые бы защищали интересы работников? Это вопрос. Вот тут надо подумать и, конечно же, путем разработки и утверждения коллективных договоров, то есть обязательств работодателей перед своими работниками, мы должны обеспечивать и охрану труда, и все гарантии должны предоставлять, социальную защиту, но это мы пока не можем положительно ответить на эти вопросы. Но в основном в негосударственном секторе, частном секторе работают женщины. Поэтому я хочу на этот вопрос особо обратить внимание. Шестое направление – вопросы миграции. Это тоже является одним из основных в сфере обеспечения достойного труда и гендерного равенства. Зачастую миграция – это реакция на ограничение возможности трудоустройства внутри страны. Это также требует внимания наших трехсторонних партнеров. Видим необходимость проведения исследований по выявлению причин миграции и по их итогам разработать адресные программы или хотя бы планы действий по совершенствованию механизма защиты трудовых прав наших мигрантов. Они могут включать в себя такие шаги, как обучение востребованным профессиям иностранным языкам, курсы по трудовым правам в странах пребывания. Ну, конечно, это начали делать, но это еще пока не отвечает нашим требованиям. Вот это, на наш взгляд, позволит снизить риск попадания наших сограждан, особенно женщин, в категорию жертв торговли людьми, незаконную эксплуатацию. Потому что я, как председатель комиссии по противодействию принудительному труду и торговле людьми, я вижу взаимодействие, взаимосвязанность этих двух вопросов. Женщины, которые, вот именно мигранты, которые, не зная своих прав, не зная языка, не зная абсолютно ничего, ни профессии, они становятся жертвами торговли людьми, в особенности женщины. Мужчины попадают в различные другие течения, а женщины попадают именно, становятся жертвами торговли людьми. Поэтому на этот вопрос необходимо обращать очень серьезное внимание. Кроме того, немаловажным является работа с возвращающимися женщинами-мигрантами, получение качественной медицинской помощи, обучение профессиям их у себя на родине уже, содействие трудоустройстве. Это те меры, на которые должна рассчитывать каждая женщина при возвращении на свою родину. Уважаемые друзья, Узбекистан твердо привержен сегодня, вы знаете все, политике добрососедства, конструктивного сотрудничества со всеми международными партнерами, как на двустороннем, так и на многостороннем форматах. Активно расширяются наши торгово-экономические связи, знаете, с зарубежными странами, укрепляется сельскохозяйственная кооперация, укрепляется промышленная кооперация, создаются новые драйверы экономического сотрудничества. Это, безусловно, способствует росту количества рабочих мест и обуславливает исключительную возможность обеспечения достойных условий труда в нашей стране. В этой связи, озвучивая достижения Узбекистана и стоящие перед нами вызовы, я хотела бы призвать вас к активному диалогу и выработать конкретные практические меры в сфере обеспечения достойной занятости, равных возможностей заработка, самореализации наших женщин и мужчин. Это будет служить в первую очередь повышению благосостояния наших граждан, а значит в целом процветанию нашей страны. По итогам сегодняшней конференции я призываю трехсторонних партнеров принять коммюнике, в котором будут очерчены наши дальнейшие совместные шаги по обеспечению гендерного равенства, социальной справедливости и продвижению принципов достойного труда в Узбекистане. Я убеждена, что сегодняшняя наша конференция даст новый импульс для расширения сотрудничества с международным сообществом по вопросам укрепления достойного труда и достижению гендерного равенства в целом в Узбекистане. Я хочу пожелать вам всем плодотворной работы. Я думаю, что это направление, да, мы впервые обсуждаем совместно с Международной организацией труда вопросы гендерного равенства в сфере труда. Я уверена, что и это новое направление, оно не является новым ни для МОД, ни для Узбекистана, но тем не менее вот в таком большом коллективе, в дружеском таком сообществе, я думаю, мы выработаем полезные для нас рекомендации. Я уверена, что за полдня невозможно разработать всех рекомендаций, поэтому хотя бы в этом коммюнике мы выработать должны общие такие направления. Потом каждое из этих направлений, оно должно более быть расширено, и по каждому из направлений мы должны определить конкретные действия, за которые будут отвечать конкретные исполнители и в конкретные сроки. Я думаю, что эта конференция, она должна быть, первая сегодня. Я думаю, что мы должны проводить ее каждый год, подводить итоги, вырабатывать наши дальнейшие шаги для улучшения положения в сфере гендерного равенства. Благодарю вас всех за внимание.
Благодарю вас, Танзиль Камаловна, за очень обширное, обстоятельное разъяснение реформ, осуществляемых в нашей стране, направленных на обеспечение гендерного равенства и достойного труда. Очень важно, с уверенностью можно сказать, что эти реформы направлены на усиление роли и значения женщин в нашем обществе. Как говорят ученые, проходят последнюю милю, то есть доходят до самых отдаленных уголков и махалей нашей страны, и народ это чувствует, и женщины это чувствуют. Мы верим, что принятие, если можно так выразиться, ташкентского коммюнике по итогам нашей конференции определит новые подходы по обеспечению социальной справедливости, достижению гендерного равенства и, безусловно, будет новым этапом продвижения принципа достойного труда в Узбекистане. Как сказал Танзиль Камаловна, в новой Конституции и новом Трудовом кодексе Узбекистана заложены очень важные и действенные нормы, запрещающие дискриминацию в сфере труда и занятий. И в обеспечении исполнения данных норм очень важная роль отводится Министерству занятости и сокращения бедности Республики Узбекистан. В этой связи для приветствия участников конференции предоставляю слово министру занятости и сокращения бедности Республики Узбекистан Бизоту Анваровичу Мусаеву. Спасибо.
Салам алейкум. Уважаемая госпожа Танзиль Камаловна Нарбаева, госпожа Кулаева, госпожа Кинг, госпожа Видаль-Блюз, господин Хайдаров, уважаемые коллеги, которые присутствуют в этом зале. Конечно, после выступления Танзиль Камаловны нелегко. Она практически осветила все аспекты, связанные с повышением гендерных вопросов в Узбекистане, что в этом направлении сделано и с точки зрения законодательства, и с точки зрения всех изменений во главе с нашим уважаемым президентом. Но если вы позволите, я тоже в первую очередь рад приветствовать всех сегодняшней конференции на тему пути достижения гендерного равенства и достойного труда в Узбекистане. Прежде всего, позвольте поблагодарить организаторов, Международную организацию труда за то, что они системно выбирают площадку Ташкента, Узбекистана для проведения таких важных мероприятий. На протяжении нескольких сотен лет мировое общество объединяло усилия для борьбы за права человека. В результате поднятие на уровень международных стандартов концепции прав человека, особенно женщин, стало одним из важнейших достижений цивилизации. В частности, права женщин в сфере труда стали неотъемлемой частью ценностей, принципов и задач, направленных на обеспечение социальной справедливости и достойного труда, справедливо оплачиваемой работы, выполняемой в условиях свободы, равенства, безопасности и достоинства. Уважаемые коллеги, через призму социальной справедливости в Узбекистане под руководством главы нашего государства, уважаемого Шавката Миромоновича Мирзияева, реализуются целенаправленные меры в сфере обеспечения трудовых, социальных и экономических прав. И, конечно же, особое внимание, как только что отметила Танзиль Камаловна, уделяется вопросу обеспечения гендерного равенства и повышения активности женщин в обществе. Во главе с председателем Сената Танзиль Камаловной функционирует комиссия по вопросам обеспечения гендерного равенства Республики Узбекистан, о деятельности которой вы только что услышали. Сегодня в парламенте Узбекистана доля женщин уже превышает 30%. На руководящих постах в органах государственного управления 27%. И эти цифры из года в год только будут расти. Совместно с ПРООН и Всемирным банком реализуются проекты по развитию женского предпринимательства. И при поддержке нашего партнера в лице Международной организации труда мы смогли добиться больших результатов в социально-экономической сфере, объединив усилия всех заинтересованных сторон в рамках социального диалога. Как вам уже известно, в апреле вступил в силу новый трудовой кодекс, в котором определены основные принципы правового регулирования трудовых и непосредственно связанных с ним общественных отношений. В частности, равенство и гарантированность обеспечения трудовых прав работников и запрещение дискриминации в сфере труда и занятости, свобода труда и запрещение принудительного труда, социальное партнерство в сфере труда, недопустимость ухудшения правового положения работников, обеспечение принципа гендерной нейтральности в вопросах регулирования труда работников, совмещающих труд с исполнением семейных обязанностей. В целях устранения гендерного неравенства предоставляется ряд гарантий и льгот на того члена семьи, который фактически осуществляет уход за ребенком и его воспитанием. Закрепление указанных принципов в Кодексе соответствует положениям, ратифицированных Узбекистаном основополагающих конвенций МОД и направлено на обеспечение неукоснительного соблюдения прав и законных интересов работников. Дорогие друзья, несмотря на достигнутые результаты, мы не собираемся останавливаться. Женщины, несмотря на внешнюю хрупкость, обладают огромной внутренней силой и талантом. Если сегодня мы откроем путь к их мечте, предоставим выбор и возможность стать лучшей версией себя, завтра они помогут нам сделать этот мир лучше и красивее. Благодарю за внимание.
Разбизат Анварович, как вы отметили, правительству уделяется особенно внимание повышению роли женщин в обществе, успешно реализуется стратегия достижения гендерного равенства, растет доля женщин во всех сферах нашей жизни, особенно на рынке труда. Как Разбизат Анварович, в Трудовом кодексе определено, что социальное партнерство создает необходимые условия для осуществления трехстороннего сотрудничества в сфере труда в целях согласования интересов работников, работодателей по вопросам регулирования трудовых отношений. В этой связи очень важная роль отводится профсоюзному движению Узбекистана, который, кроме, собственно, представительства интересов работников, взял на себя и успешно осуществляет социальные обязательства по защите уязвимых слоев населения, особенно женщин. В этой связи представляю слово заместителя председателя Федерации профсоюза Узбекистана Махмудалиеву Махтиёра Хасановича. Прошу вас.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli bugungi konferensiyamiz ishtirokchilari. Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli Tanzila Камаловна, уважаемая Ольга Владимировна, уважаемые гости, участники сегодняшней конференции. Вопрос обеспечения гендерного равенства продолжает оставаться актуальным во всем мире. Общеизвестно, что достижение гендерного равенства создает прочную основу для достижения устойчивого прогресса во всех аспектах жизни общества, включая политику, экономику, право, идеологию и культуру, образование и науку. Равенство, вытекающее из целей устойчивого развития Организации Объединенных Наций, чрезвычайно актуально для всех государств. В Узбекистане эта сфера возведена в ранг государственной политики. По оценкам Международной организации труда, Узбекистан осуществляет целенаправленные действия по улучшению положения женщин в сфере труда. В этом важнейшем направлении мы полагаем, что у нас еще наблюдается недоиспользование трудового потенциала женщин, что сдерживает в целом экономическое развитие. Исследователи отмечают, что гендерное равенство в экономике привело бы к взрывному росту ВВП, производительности труда, благосостоянию семьи, повышению зарплат и социальных пособий. Кроме этого, рост числа стабильных и хорошо оплачиваемых рабочих мест для женщин повышает общий уровень дохода на душу населения. Необходимо отметить, что за последние годы в нашей стране были предприняты масштабные меры по поощрению общественно-политической активности женщин с целью обеспечения гендерного равенства, расширения их участия в государственном управлении. Республика Узбекистан наряду с Конвенцией о ликвидации всех форм дискриминации в отношении женщин ратифицировала Конвенцию Международной организации труда о равной оплате труда мужчин и женщин, об охране материнства, о дискриминации в сфере труда и занятий. Принятие законов о гарантиях равных прав и возможностей для женщин и мужчин, о защите женщин от домогательств и насилия вывело работу по этой тематике на новый уровень. Наряду с этим, законом о внесении дополнений и изменений в закон Республики Узбекистан о равных правах и гарантиях возможностей для женщин и мужчин на Федерацию профсоюзов Узбекистана возложена задача проведения гендерного аудита в рамках общественного контроля в государственных органах и организациях. В соответствии с этим законом данный гендерный аудит будет проведен в соответствии с утвержденным трехлетним планом. Для более чем 110 специалистов был организован и проведен практически обучающий семинар В сотрудничестве с экспертами в этой области разрабатывается методология аудита с учетом гендерной специфики. Совместно с Министерством юстиции и Комитетом по делам семьи и женщин разработан план-график информационных мероприятий по реализации данного закона всеми профсоюзными комитетами и организациями. В нашей стране проводится ряд практических действий по таким направлениям, как обеспечение гендерного равенства, улучшение социальных условий жизни женщин, всесторонняя поддержка и развитие института семьи, имплементация общепринятых международных норм, национальное законодательство целью ликвидации всех форм дискриминации в области прав женщин, а также повышение правовой культуры женщин. По инициативе нашего уважаемого президента Шавката Миромановича целью социально-экономической поддержки женщин внедрена система Айоллар Дафтары, женская тетрадь, и на это ежегодно выделяются средства из государственного бюджета. В стратегии развития нового Узбекистана на 2022-2026 годы определены важные задачи по обеспечению всех прав и интересов женщин, которые приняты нами к безусловному исполнению. Федерация профсоюзов Узбекистана активно участвует в диалоге о новых перспективах и подходах, направленных на укрепление механизмов по обеспечению гендерного равенства Узбекистана. Наша цель – привлечь женщин в профсоюзные организации, продвигать гендерное равенство на руководящих должностях, обеспечивать гендерное равенство в процессе принятия решений на всех уровнях и привлекать внимание к гендерному равенству в профсоюзных программах и проектах. Я хотел бы отметить, что на сегодняшний день существуют препятствия для женщин на рынке труда и проблемы, с которыми сталкиваются женщины, совмещающие свою профессиональную деятельность с семейными обязанностями, это еще полностью не решены. Прежде всего, сами государственные служащие должны чувствовать ответственность в вопросах гендерного равенства и в различных формах должны активно участвовать в мерах по устранению существующих гендерных стереотипов, а также повышать роль женщин в обществе и не бояться делиться властью с женщинами при принятии решений на всех уровнях. Кроме этого, продолжается тенденция занятости женщин в отраслях с низкой оплатой труда, то есть в большинстве случаев они работают на тех работах, которые оплачиваются меньше, чем мужчинам. Поэтому из важных задач профсоюзов является устранение разницы в оплате труда с помощью коллективных договоров и соглашений, поддержание и продвижение принципа равной оплаты за равноценный труд. Подавляющее большинство женщин заняты в неофициальном секторе, то есть в частном секторе, где вопросы социальной защиты женщин требуют повышенного внимания. Полагаю необходимым направить на устранение имеющихся недостатков и проблем усилия как государственных структур, так и всех общественных организаций обеспечить тесную координацию этих действий. В заключение разрешите пожелать успехов в дальнейшей работе всем, кто занимается благородным делом обеспечения гендерного равенства в нашей стране. Благодарю за внимание.
Благодарю вас, Батыр Хасанович. Как вы отметили, гендерное равенство является одним из ключевых важнейших факторов обеспечения продуктивной, производительной среды на рабочих местах. И особенно хотелось бы отметить, что гендерный аудит, который проводится в рамках общественного контроля в государственных органах и организациях, и который основан на методологии с учетом гендерной специфики, очень важен для обеспечения защиты трудовых прав женщин на рабочих местах у работодателей. В этой связи следующее слово представляется социальному партнеру в сфере труда, представляющему интересы работодателей, председателю Конфедерации работодателей Узбекистана, председателю Ассоциации Устекстильпром Хайдару Ильхам Курч. Пожалуйста.
Ассаламу алейкум, хурматли анжуман катнашчылары, уважаемая Танзила Камаловна, Изот Анварович, Ольга Владимировна, уважаемые гости. Мне очень приятно приветствовать на сегодняшней очень важной, на мой взгляд, конференции, посвященной гендерному равенству. И от имени сообщества работодателей позвольте высказать свои мысли, свои пожелания, может быть, свои предложения. Я сейчас очень внимательно слушал направления, которые уважаемая Танзиль Камаловна очертила. Я взял на себе те задачи, которые мы будем решать. Это в части и расширения предпринимателей среди наших, расширения числа женщин среди предпринимателей, образование. И самое важное, что доведение той информации, которой обладаем мы, обладает Министерство труда, до наших предпринимателей. Перед нами стоит первостепенная цель полного искоренения и предотвращения случаев, в которых работники, работодатели или иные лица подвергаются угрозам, издевательствам, направленным на работе. Важно всегда помнить, что подобная форма насилия и домогательства угрожает безопасности, здоровью и благополучию людей и может нанести им не только физический, но и моральный урон. Важно отметить, что Конфедерация работодателей по ряду с трехсторонними партнерами активно в обсуждении необходимости ратификации Конвенции МОД об искоренении насильства и домогательства номер 190 и рекомендации номер 206 от 2019 года. Конвенция обязывает разработать национальное законодательство, запрещающее насилие, харассмент именно в сфере труда, и работодатели предпринимать активные шаги для искоренения любых форм гендерной дискриминации. Будучи ответственными работодателями, мы не только обязаны заботиться о работниках, но и в первую очередь должны быть заинтересованы в том, что сфера труда была свободной от гендерного притеснения. В этом во многом способствует увеличению производительности. Я очень хотел бы подчеркнуть, что соблюдение таких вот простых правил будет способствовать увеличению производительности и, соответственно, повышению репутации и даже повышению репутации нашего национального бренда на международном рынке. Вирусные тенденции гендерной дискриминации и степень интенсивности варьируются от характера работы, оплаты труда, а также его условий. Сейчас уважаемый Бекзат Анварович об этом подробно рассказал. Пандемия коронавируса стала катализатором некоторых элементов гендерной дискриминации. Мы это видели. Особенно в некоторых отраслях, сферы деятельности которых при некоторых видах организации труда. Этот кризис стал печальным напоминанием о том, что работодатели должны брать на себя первостепенную ответственность в обеспечении допущения таких элементов. В этой связи Конфедерация работодателей Узбекистана совместно с Международной организацией труда разработала практическое руководство для работодателей. Вот это руководство. Оно называется «Искоренение дискриминации и домогательств в сфере труда». Оно большое, оно подробное. Я уверен, что наши работодатели, ознакомившись, они увидят что-то новое и с точки зрения методологии смогут применять ее в практической своей жизни. Как направление здесь присутствует это очередь руководств, в первую очередь данное руководство раскрывает особенности правильного толкования определения характеристик гендерной дискриминации. Во-вторых, спектр норм национального законодательства, а также международных трудовых стандартов, закрепляющих ответственность работодателей. В-третьих, инструкция по разработке политики предприятия по недопущению нарушений гендерных прав. Сейчас уважаемый заместитель председателя профсоюза упомянул, что есть гендерный аудит, но чтобы обеспечить прохождение этого гендерного аудита, необходимы вот такие вот инструкции. В-четвертых, положительная практика зарубежных и наших местных компаний по обеспечению гендерного равенства на рабочем месте. И в-пятых, руководство отражен механизм действия для жертв харассмента в сфере труда, контактная информация горячих линий и организаций медицинской и психологической поддержки. Мы сейчас услышали, что мы должны уделять внимание и образованию. Пользуясь случаем, я бы хотел поблагодарить двух наших больших партнеров. Это GIZ, Германское агентство по развитию, и ЕБРР, конференция которых прошло недавно. Например, ЕБРР в прошлом году провела программу по менторству для женщин-предпринимателей. То есть оно дало практическое руководство, оно проходило в течение 6 месяцев, и я уверен, что многие женщины получили первые навыки предпринимательства. Второе, это с GIZ мы проводим широкую программу по дуальному образованию. Это не только получение профессионального образования. Мы даем возможность нашим обучающимся стать завтра предпринимателями. В этом мы очень тесно сотрудничаем с обществом женщин-предпринимателей. Сейчас очень популярно становится создание клубов предпринимателей. Есть клуб предпринимателей женщин в городе Ташкенте, есть клуб предпринимателей в нашей ассоциации. Он полгода назад начал свою работу, и мы уже видим, что женщина-предприниматель, женщина-руководитель на предприятии, она уже не позволит никаким нарушениям в сфере гендера. Конфедерация работодателей Узбекистана будет продолжать принимать практические меры по недопущению факторов гендерной дискриминации. Сообщество работодателей также выступает с предложением о поддержке тех работодателей, которые сами очень трепетно и деликатно относятся к этому вопросу. Хотел бы заверить, что как на национальном, так и на международном уровне Конфедерация работодателей будет продолжать бороться с любыми негативными проявлениями. Я хотел бы здесь упомянуть работу нашего Сената, который в течение прошлого года практически 8 месяцев мониторила работу двух отраслей, кожно-обувной и текстильно-швейно-трикотажной, с тем, чтобы мы в полной мере отвечали вопросам гендерного характера. Я благодарен, потому что это нам позволило подняться на определенно другой уровень, а также мобилизовать наши смежные министерства и ведомства в оказании содействия. В конце я хотел бы поблагодарить всю команду МОД за организацию этой конференции и пригласить 30 мая мы проводим вторую международную конференцию Конфедерации работодателей Узбекистана. Мы ожидаем, что именно в рамках этой конференции мы будем заключать очень важные документы. В частности, если позволит Ольга Владимировна, мы планируем подписать меморандум с нашими трехсторонними партнерами и с нашими партнерами АЛО и МФК по началу работы программы Better Work в Узбекистане. Я должен упомянуть, что это для нашей отрасли, для текстильной швейно-трикотажной отрасли, это огромный шаг вперед. И работа этой программы также охватывает вопросы гендерного равенства. Тем самым я хотел бы поблагодарить вас за внимание и выразить готовность продолжать сотрудничество. Спасибо.
Благодарю вас, Ильхам Атурович. Разработана конфедерация совместно с АИЛО МОД «Практическое руководство для работодателей по искоренению гендерной дискриминации и харассмента, домогательств в сфере труда» имеет очень большое практическое значение для осознания, выявления, предотвращения дискриминационного поведения, наносящего неизгладимый вред работникам, бизнесу, государству и имиджу нашей страны. Now it's my honor to give a floor to Madam Consuelo Vidal Bruce, United Nations Resident Coordinator in Uzbekistan. Please, Madam.
Good morning, dear Madam Narbaeva, Chairwoman of the Senate, Minister Behzod Musaev, representatives of the employers, of the workers, dear Olga Kulaeva from the Regional Office of the ILO, dear Excellencies from the international community that are accompanying us today, dear friends from the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be here today on behalf of the UN agencies, funds, and programs that work in Uzbekistan in this conference on pathways to gender equality and decent work in Uzbekistan. I would like to begin by commending the government of Uzbekistan for its significant reforms in recent years to improve the livelihoods and working conditions of women. These reforms have included expanding girls' access to education, increasing the representation of women in parliament, in civil service, in management, and implementing targeted support for women and youth in the labor market. The world is facing a number of major challenges that disproportionately affect the most disadvantaged and vulnerable, such as women, in the informal economy and in secure forms of work, youth who are neither in employment nor in education or training, migrants and those belonging to ethnic and racial minorities, older persons, and those with disabilities or living with HIV/AIDS. Women's overrepresentation in sectors severely impacted by the pandemic and in informal employment deepened their greater vulnerability, exacerbating pre-existing decent work deficits and widening inequalities and discrimination in societies. The unequal distribution of unpaid care work and limited access to maternity benefits, care services, and parental leave have further deepened disparities, underscoring the need for a gender-responsive recovery. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has called for urgent action to achieve gender equality and has warned that global progress on human rights is vanishing before our eyes, calling for collective action worldwide by governments, civil society, and the private sector to provide gender-responsive education, improve skills training, and invest more in bridging the digital gender divide. In this context, when it is more important than ever to advance gender equality and decent work for all, the ILO's transformative agenda on gender equality provides a roadmap for achieving this goal. The agenda calls for a number of measures, including ensuring equal pay for work of equal value, expanding policies providing adequate paid care leave and promoting a more balanced sharing of work and family responsibilities, promoting employment creation and lifelong learning policies that close gender skills gaps, investing in education, in healthcare, social work, the care economy, and other sectors addressing understaffing and improving working conditions, among others. The Global Accelerator on Jobs and Social Protection for Just Transitions is another important initiative that can help to advance gender equality and decent work. One of the complementary supportive areas of this accelerator is the mobilization of public and private domestic and international resources to invest in universal social protection and gender-responsive employment interventions with a view to creating quality jobs. Sufficient investment in the care sector is one of the entry points of this accelerator to facilitate the creation of decent jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, the provision of quality services to older persons, children, and people with disabilities, and reduce the unpaid care burden carried by family members, particularly women, while facilitating women's effective labor force participation. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Uzbekistan has confirmed its strong commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals and is also a strong supporter of the ILO's transformative agenda on gender equality. The government has ratified a number of ILO conventions on gender equality, is working to implement these conventions, and has expressed its interest in continuing to collaborate with the UN system to further advance gender equality and decent work. So, to conclude, I would like to express that we welcome the tripartite statement to be announced today, reaffirming the commitment of the government of Uzbekistan and social partners to its international commitments and decent work agenda, and investments in SDGs 5 and 8, calling for achieving gender equality, empowerment of all women and girls. A number of UN agencies, funds, and programs, such as UNFPA, UNDP, UNICEF, and UN Women, are already working jointly with the ILO to support Uzbekistan in achieving these objectives. And I believe that by working together, we can achieve gender equality and decent work for all in Uzbekistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Consuela. Much appreciate very hard work doing by family of you in our country in the field of decent job, gender balance, and any issues. As I know, Madam Consuela, you were before appointed to this high position in December last year. You served as United Nations resident coordinator in the Caribbean and Central American countries. So the gender, decent job, and labor are also top issues. So Madam Consuela has a good expertise to compare the situation between our countries, and I hope it's in our favor. Слово представляется нашему долголетнему надежному партнеру, директору Бюро МОД для стран Восточной Европы и Центральной Азии, руководителю группы технической поддержки по вопросам достойного труда Кулаевой Ольге Владимировне.
Уважаемая Танзиль Камаловна, уважаемый Берзот, уважаемые наши социальные партнеры, представители агентств ООН, дипломатического корпуса и экспертного сообщества, дорогие участники конференции. Надо сказать, это не первое мероприятие высокого уровня, которое мы совместно с нашими друзьями и партнерами проводим здесь, в Узбекистане, но первое по этой теме. И это такой знаковый шаг. Почему тема важна для Узбекистана? Мы сегодня вот уже получили очень широкую и яркую картину и в выступлении Танзили Камаловны, и в выступлении господина министра, и в выступлениях наших социальных партнеров. Но и для МОД, и как для всей семьи ООН, эта тема тоже очень важна. Когда наше агентство создавалось более 100 лет назад, в 1919 году, на выходе из Первой мировой войны, было понятно, что сохранение, укрепление социальной справедливости как основы устойчивого мира будет главной темой нашего мандата. И вот на Парижской конференции, которая предшествовала подписанию Версальского мирного договора, обсуждались основные параметры того, что потом позволит миру жить в социальной справедливости. И в качестве одного из положений уже тогда, весной 1919 года, выдвигалась идея равной оплаты за равный труд мужчин и женщин. И до сегодняшнего дня это остается нашим приоритетом, и до сегодняшнего дня эта задача еще не полностью решена в глобальной экономике. Хотя это является одной из основополагающих конвенций МОД. Если говорить об Узбекистане, то следует отметить, что женщины массово вышли в сферу общественного производства намного раньше, чем в значительном числе европейских стран. Это происходило в первой половине XX века, и тогда можно было увидеть, как они вливаются и в промышленное производство, и в сельское хозяйство, и в сферу услуг своей страны. Но до сегодняшнего дня уровень участия в рабочей силе мужчин и женщин заметно отличается. По национальной статистике, которая передается в статистику МОД и отражается в базе данных, у нас на 2020 год уровень участия мужчин в рабочей силе составлял 77,6%, а женщин 42,5%. То есть там разница была практически в 35% пунктов. И еще явление, которое характерно не только для Узбекистана. Когда женщины начали массово выходить в сферу общественного производства, они занимали в этой сфере те ниши, которые они традиционно занимали дома. Они исполняли те же роли, но в сфере общественного производства. И это были отрасли ухода, педагогики, обучения, образования, здравоохранения, которые по определению оплачивались ниже, чем те отрасли, в которых преобладала мужская рабочая сила. То есть столевар по определению получает больше санитарки. И поэтому вот эта проблема отставания в уровне заработной платы, она наблюдается и в экономике Узбекистана до сегодняшнего дня. Поэтому, конечно, есть еще темы, как сегодня вот мы услышали, над которыми нам следует работать вместе. Ну и, конечно, естественно, это все связано с существующими стереотипами, традиция вековой тормоз истории, и женщина, конечно, в общественном сознании – это хранительница очага, что хорошо, но что обусловливает то, что и распределение семейных обязанностей, как правило, тоже осуществляется неравномерно. Женщина здесь на себя берет значительную долю этих обязанностей. Мы понимаем, что Узбекистан успешно развивает свою политику на этом направлении, и мы готовы, естественно, оказывать содействие в ее разработке и реализации. Здесь уже упоминалось о том, что целый ряд конвенций ратифицирован, предполагается к ратификации, и сюда относятся и Конвенция 102 о минимальных нормах социальной защиты, и Конвенция 183 о защите материнства, и Конвенция 190, о которой сегодня уже все здесь сказали. И не только по этим направлениям мы готовы поддерживать Узбекистан. Между Узбекистаном и МОД существует страновая программа достойного труда, которая полностью ассоциирована с рамочным соглашением системы ООН. И вот в нашей страновой программе, для которой разработан план реализации, то есть дорожная карта, есть несколько направлений, где мы уже практически занимаемся тем, что должно привести к лучшему гендерному равенству на национальном рынке труда. Это не только законодательные инструменты, но это практические действия, и мы готовы дальше это осуществлять. Речь идет, например, о том, что мы работаем над распространением принципов социальной защиты в целом и защиты материнства в частности для женщин, которые заняты вне формальной экономики, параллельно с тем, что вот упоминал Бахтияр Хасанович, мы способствуем тому, чтобы выводить их в экономику формальную, и для этого тоже есть целый ряд мер и программ. Поэтому наша совместная работа, она охватывает и будет охватывать несколько направлений. Это разработка национальных политик, это укрепление национальной системы социальной защиты, это, естественно, создание качественных рабочих мест И это задача, которую нам нужно всем вместе решать, добиваться повышения представительности женщин, в том числе и на руководящих должностях. Если мы посмотрим на наш президиум, он идеально гендерно сбалансирован. Но если мы повнимательнее на него посмотрим, то должности любого и каждого из нас во многих языках описываются существительными мужского рода. Стереотипы еще сильны, и тут действительно есть над чем поработать. Кстати сказать, и МОД в том числе. Наш генеральный директор в своей выборной программе пообещал, и теперь мы это неукоснительно выполняем, он даже ввел для этого индикатор, повышать представительство женщин на руководящих должностях МОД. То есть здесь мы идем параллельными курсами и можем опытом друг с другом обмениваться. Узбекистан многого добился, и еще многое удастся сделать. Феномен достижения гендерного равенства – это очень многоплановое явление, и поэтому хочу подчеркнуть, что здесь мы действительно, вот как уважаемая госпожа постоянный координатор ООН отметила, это действие многих агентств. Каждый в рамках своего мандата должен это обеспечивать, и мы готовы в эту совместную работу включаться и делать то, что предписывает нам делать наш мандат, потому что для достижения гендерного равенства требуется усилия очень многих людей. Поэтому сегодня мы будем рады пригласить экспертов разных стран, которые поделятся опытом этих стран. Мы понимаем, что здесь потребуются усилия не только законодательной и исполнительной власти, но и наших социальных партнеров, и международных финансовых институтов, академической среды, экспертного сообщества. И всех мы дружно приглашаем, естественно, к сотрудничеству на этой площадке. В заключение я хотела бы еще раз напомнить о том, что генеральный директор МОД господин Жильбер Онгбо выступил с инициативой. И эта инициатива, его идея заключается в том, что нужно создавать глобальную коалицию по социальной справедливости. Мы занимаемся защитой принципов социальной справедливости больше 100 лет. И тем не менее мы видим, что еще очень много нам предстоит сделать, и это требует привлечения очень многих сил. Поэтому мы в этой коалиции надеемся увидеть наши страны-члены, международные финансовые институты, наших надежных партнеров, естественно, разумеется, правительство и социальный партнер, то есть основа Международной организации труда. И для того, чтобы определить параметры того, как эта коалиция могла бы действовать, МОД будет проводить вот буквально через месяц, 14 и 15 июня в Женеве в рамках Международной конференции труда Всемирный саммит «Мир труда. Социальная справедливость». И я верю в то, что вопросы гендерного равенства займут свое достойное место при обсуждениях на этом саммите. Благодарю за внимание.
Спасибо, Ольга Владимировна, вы совершенно правильно отметили, что достижение гендерного равенства – это многоплановое явление, требующее большой концентрации ресурсов. Совместно с ILO мы с 2021 года реализуем дорожную карту страновой программы достойного труда. И в рамках программы очень много сделали, с ILO, особенно с московским офисом. Реализовали очень успешные программы, проекты, укрепление государственной трудовой инспекции и неформальный сектор, так сказали. И везде вот отдельным краснитью проходит именно концентрация на гендерном вопросе, гендерном равенстве. Мы в рамках страновой программы под руководством председателя комиссии Таны Камал выполним все обязательства, конечно, и по президентским конвенциям 102, 183 и особенно 190 о насилии и домогательстве. И даем приоритет, что страновая программа полностью направлена на защиту прав и возможностей для женщин, а также достижение гендерного равенства на рынке труда. Now it's my honor to give a floor to Chief of Gender, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Branch of ILO, Madam Chidi King, and Madam King also will moderate the second session. Please, Madam.
There goes my pen. Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Narbaeva. Good morning, Mr. Musaev, their distinguished guests, their social partners, all protocols observed. It really is a delight and a pleasure for me to join you here on what is a landmark event, the Pathways to Gender Equality and Decent Work in Uzbekistan. I think this story of Uzbekistan is such a positive story, and at a time when the world really does need such positive stories. It's a shining example of what progress can be achieved when there is political will and commitment at the highest level. So we thank you for that. Just perhaps to give you a global picture of some of the challenges that the world continues to face. According to the ILO's World Employment and Social Outlook trends for this year, persistent decent work deficits around the world present a global risk for deepening inequalities and gender gaps in the world of work, all of which again points to the importance of this conference. The report shows that hundreds of millions of people lack access to paid employment, and those who are employed all too often lack access to social protection and fundamental rights at work. The majority of workers either working in the informal economy or unable to express their interests through social dialogue and collective bargaining. And we know that the job gaps globally are particularly large for women, with women facing 15% gap compared to 10.5% for men. And all of these challenges, I think, have been expressed by all of our speakers today as being also present and relevant here in Uzbekistan, and part of what this conference is designed to address. UN Women has stated that according to the current rate of progress globally, it will take us another 286 years, can you imagine, to reform, to bring all the necessary reforms to legal frameworks, to promote, enforce, and monitor gender equality, and to remove the discriminatory gaps that we find in our labour markets and in our world of work today. Again, the challenges, I think, that are facing us globally and here in Uzbekistan were mentioned by each and every speaker today. Women's inability at the moment to participate on an equal footing in our labour markets is affecting their rights to economic autonomy, to participate fully in our social, political, cultural lives. Big challenge globally and here in Uzbekistan for us to address. We know what many of the barriers that are impeding women's equal participation in our lives generally are. And again, all of them have been mentioned at various times by speakers today. Violence and harassment in the world of work. And we're very pleased to hear that Uzbekistan is working towards ratification of the ILO's Convention 190, which is a groundbreaking convention that really does provide a roadmap towards eliminating all forms of violence and harassment in the world of work, but especially gender-based violence and harassment. We know that unequal sharing of care responsibilities, both within the homes and between the state and families, is another major structural barrier to women's human rights, including their ability to participate in decent work in our economies. And again, Uzbekistan is taking steps towards addressing this. We know that until we bring transformation towards the way we perceive these care responsibilities, until we really recognize the value of caring to our families, to our societies, to our economies, and that we acknowledge this as a collective responsibility that we all need to invest in, and that we need to ensure does not hinder anybody's ability to enjoy their human rights, but on the contrary, brings fulfillment to people's ability, particularly women's ability to enjoy their human rights. These barriers will persist. And the ILO is very pleased to be accompanying Uzbekistan on a project that will look at how investment in care opportunities, investment in the care economy will not only enhance economic growth, will not only bring decent work opportunities, but will help close gender gaps in our economies and in our societies. And this for sure will be part of the roadmap to be adopted on the Decent Work Country Programme. I absolutely want to congratulate Uzbekistan in its firm and demonstrated commitment to achieving gender equality, to working towards the sustainable development goals, all of which we see embodied in the National Strategy for Achieving Gender Equality in 2023. The ILO, of course, stands ready to continue to accompany Uzbekistan in addressing some of these persistent challenges, in working towards closing gender pay gaps. The ratification of C100 now needs to be accompanied by its firm implementation. And we hope that Uzbekistan will join the Equal Pay International Coalition, which is a coalition that is co-led by the ILO, by the OECD and UN Women. And I know that in the panel that follows, we will hear many members of EPIC, and we will also hear from the Swiss experience, indeed, of being a member of EPIC and chairing EPIC, and the Swiss own national experience of promoting equal pay. We stand ready to work with Uzbekistan on the implementation of Convention 111 on non-discrimination in employment and occupation. So dear guests, let me just close again by congratulating Uzbekistan on what really is a landmark conference, the first of its kind, as my colleague Olga just said. We hope that others will look to Uzbekistan and follow your example. And I really do hope that Ms. Nabareva's wish that this will become an annual event that really guides Uzbekistan on the path to gender equality and decent work is fulfilled. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam King, for a good warm words about Uzbekistan experience in the field of gender equality and decent work. We are looking forward for deep cooperation with your branch in the future. Дорогие участники конференции, мы закончили приветственную часть. Позвольте поблагодарить наших спикеров и перейти ко второй пленарной сессии. Спасибо большое. Нет, после перерыва короткого. После перерыва.
Okay, hello again, dear distinguished guests. Welcome to the next part of this program. I'm afraid we're running a little bit late, so we will start the proceedings without much further ado. We have a number of distinguished panelists who we are waiting, with bated breath to hear, so welcome to you all. And we have a number of speakers who will also be joining us online. I'm sure, like me, you're all very much keen to hear them share their expertise and experience, with this panel. So maybe without further ado, we will move to our first speaker who's joining us online, and this is Mr. Mansour Omera from my branch, actually, at the ILO, the Gender Equality, Diversity and Inclusion branch, and he's an equality and non-discrimination specialist. So Mansour, you're going to present to us the work that you are doing on women in the world of work in Uzbekistan. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And greetings from Geneva. It is an honor to be with you here today. I will share my presentation so you can have a better sense. So one moment. Apologies for that. So here we go. Can you see the presentation correctly? Okay. So as I said, it is an honor to join you all for this important event. My presentation today builds on a research undertaken with the ILO constituents in Uzbekistan and presented in October 2020, with updates to reflect recent changes that have happened since. The report, entitled Women and the World of Work in Uzbekistan Towards Gender Equality and Decent Work for All, is available on the ILO website. In this presentation, I am not able to give a comprehensive assessment of recent developments. Instead, I will provide some highlights to stimulate further reflection, discussion, and action. As you know, Uzbekistan has taken significant steps to improve women's situation in the world of work. It has introduced significant legal, policy, and institutional changes for that purpose. The esteemed speakers in the previous session have covered a number of these changes. For the purposes of this presentation, I want to mention two key pieces of legislation. First, law number LRU 562 on guarantees with respect to equal rights and opportunities for women and men, adopted on the 2nd of September 2019, as amended to the 12th of April 2023. Second important piece of legislation is the new labor code, which entered into force on 30 April 2023. Law number LRU 562 seeks to eliminate and prevent gender-based discrimination, including direct and indirect discrimination. It notably addresses gender and legal expertise, gender statistics, and gender audits. All these are important for the world of work. Moreover, it guarantees equal rights and opportunities for women and men in the economic sphere and entrepreneurial activity, in labor relations, in collective contracts and agreements, in social protection, and in the sphere of family relations and parenting. It also guarantees equal treatment in the performance of domestic work. As such, the law provides an important example of mainstreaming decent work in gender equality legislation. Meanwhile, the new labor code provides an important example of mainstreaming gender equality concerns in decent work legislation. For example, concerning the issue of pay equity, the new labor code has explicit reference to the principle of equal pay for men and women for work of equal value. This principle is broader than that of equal pay for equal work, which was already in law number LRU 562. The principle of equal pay for work of equal value enables comparison of the value of work, even when the work is of entirely different nature. This is important when women and men typically undertake different jobs, as is the case in Uzbekistan. The new labor code also contains a number of provisions that promote the sharing of family responsibilities between women and men. Promoting gender equality in the sharing of family responsibilities reflects a recognition that unpaid care and domestic work are often assumed to be primarily women's responsibilities. Meanwhile, paid work is often assumed to be mainly the responsibility of men. In 2018, more than 2/3 of women's total work time was spent on unpaid care and domestic work, compared to less than 1/3 of men's total work time. You will notice in the figure in front of you that the average number of hours spent on total work was similar for women and men. However, its distribution was very different. As you know, gender norms evolve with the changes in laws, policies, institutions, and practices. It will be interesting to see how this situation regarding time use has evolved and will evolve, given the important changes introduced to address this matter. Speaking of changes, an important lesson is change is typically not linear. The gender gap in unemployment rates has widened significantly since 2018, with women's unemployment rate becoming almost double that of men in 2021. If we look at the broader measure of labor underutilization, that is the combined rate of unemployment and the potential labor force, we find that in 2020, women's rate was also almost double that of men. So that is an important question that deserves further attention to understand what explains it and also how to address it. I mentioned earlier that unpaid care and domestic work is mainly undertaken by women. As you can see in this figure, women are also overrepresented in the paid care economy, including education, healthcare, and social services. You can see in the figure on the left that about 3/4 of workers in these sectors are women. On the right, you will notice that wages in these sectors are typically lower than average. Moreover, wages in these sectors have risen more slowly than average between 2016 and 2021. Meanwhile, the two sectors with the highest wages in 2021 had lower representation than average of women. These sectors were financial and insurance activities and information and communication. Now, if the undervaluation of jobs typically undertaken by women results in lower wages, then it is important to undertake objective job evaluation. This involves comparing factors such as skill, effort, responsibilities, and working conditions. In contrast to performance appraisal, objective job evaluation is concerned with evaluating the job, not the individual worker. At the macro level, the gender pay gap has witnessed little improvement in recent years. Women remain paid less than 2/3 of what men are paid. Understanding the factors that lie behind the gender pay gap and addressing them systematically is therefore of critical importance. The transition from the informal to the formal economy remains a key concern. So in 2021, for example, about 1/4 of employed men and women were in agricultural employment, mainly in the informal economy. Also, according to official statistics, in 2021, the share of informal sector employment in total non-agricultural employment was 24.3% for women and 46.4% for men. More recently, in January-August 2022, 46% of total employment was in the informal sector. This is according to official statistics. In addition, when employees in the formal sector lack statutory job-related social security and labor protection, such as paid annual leave or paid sick leave, such workers are also in informal employment. Now, there are no official statistics I'm aware of on the subject, but data from 2018 using another survey from the World Bank, the Listening to Citizens of Uzbekistan survey, the analysis suggested that 20% of women employees and 38% of men employees lacked social security coverage. So informal employment may be even bigger than what is often reported. There are ongoing efforts to reconceptualize the informal economy in a way that recognizes all forms of informal work, including unpaid care and domestic work, beyond informal employment. So historically, initially the focus was on the informal sector, then we went to a broader vision that included employment in the informal sector, informal employment in the informal sector, informal employment in the formal sector, and informal employment in households, for example, for domestic workers. Now the vision is broadening even more at the global level to include all kinds of informal work beyond informal employment. This is an ongoing discussion among labor statisticians and other researchers at the global level. And there are efforts in Uzbekistan to ensure that statistics better reflect the reality of the informal economy, including its gender aspects. So I really look forward to see the results of these efforts. Finally, to conclude, I want to highlight some key areas that can contribute to promoting gender equality and decent work for all. First, placing decent work and gender equality at the heart of public policy, including macroeconomic policy. Often, gender equality is thought of as a micro issue. So first, you have macroeconomic factors, for example, and then you see what are the social impacts, and you try to address them specifically in relation to women's concerns. However, experience has shown that an integrative multi-level approach is more effective for transformative change. Otherwise, resources may be invested, but the actual change may not happen in reality. A second important area will be to continue addressing gender biases in policies, legislations, institutions, and practices. The government and social partners have undertaken concrete steps in that regard, including with ILO support. Relevant tools include, for example, gender audits, gender budgeting, gender-neutral job evaluations, gender-based legal reviews, and gender-responsive statistics. As you can see, it's important to link both the higher level policy and legal work to more specific tools, concrete tools that can be used in institutions at different levels, including from the national to the micro, and even for international comparisons. So this is indeed very promising work. A third key area is with respect to extending the coverage of social protection and improving the adequacy of benefits. This will help ensure that all categories of workers enjoy effective legal and social protection, including unpaid care and domestic workers, women who are agricultural workers, rural workers, street vendors, domestic workers, migrant workers, among others. Finally, a key area I want to highlight is promoting gender equality in and through social dialogue. Designing and implementing measures for gender equitable socioeconomic development should be done through inclusive social dialogue that integrates women's concerns and their voices. However, it is important to note that women are diverse in their characteristics, in the activities they undertake, in the benefits they derive from such activities, and in the experiences that they go through. Therefore, it is important that women's participation in social dialogue reflects such diversity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mansour, for a presentation that really does put into keen perspective the remaining challenges. And I think as your presentation demonstrated that since 2018, of course, we've had the COVID-19 pandemic, and I think we're seeing clearly in some of the figures that you presented, the impacts of the pandemic in reversing progress that had been made in some areas. Let's move on now to Mr. Constantine. I should say that there will be time, hopefully, because we're running late, for a few questions and answers at the end of this session, and that we'll see how we progress. Let me now invite Mr. Konstantin Obolensky, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Switzerland to the Republic of Uzbekistan, to share his presentation with us. Mr. Obolensky has had a distinguished career in government and in diplomatic service since graduating in law at the University of Basel. So, Konstantin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jedi. Dear organizers, excellencies, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if I'm not sure if this is the right presentation. Can we have my presentation, please? So, anyway, Before I will speak about Switzerland and about our experiences with gender equality, I would like to be a little bit more general. We can have the next slide, please. Gender equality is not only about women, it is about the whole society. And women's economic autonomy is one of the key drivers to achieve gender equality. We therefore need women's participation in the labor market, and to do this, we need equality in the workplace. Gender equality in the workplace is a vector of change, and it helps to give justice to discriminated groups, especially women. It also promotes social cohesion, leaving no one behind, promotes fair competition between companies both nationally and internationally, and of course, it enables sustainable development and a resilient economy. Next slide, please. Now we are seeing here the gender pay gap in Switzerland. So the gender pay gap is still persistent in Switzerland, and women earn in average about 18% less than men, which is a scandal in itself. So in order to understand what the dark and the light orange pieces mean, it means that about half of the gender pay gap is explainable and the other one is unexplainable. Explainable means women are more often in lower paid jobs, they are more in care jobs, often also still less qualified, and therefore there are reasons, so these are explanations for this gender pay gap. But the unexplained pay gap is a potentially discrimination and needs to be addressed. Next slide, please. So fighting discrimination is not a choice, it is an obligation. And to address gender-based discrimination in the workplace, we need to increase women's participation in the labor market. To do so, there are several solutions, such as fighting gender stereotypes, offering maternity, paternity, and parental leave, which is the best solution to prevent the maternity penalty and encourage men in taking more responsibilities in care duties. And this enables, obviously, the equal distribution of domestic work. The supporting of daycare facilities and after-school programs is something that the Swiss government is involved in. And then the promotion of part-time and flexible working arrangements, including for highly skilled female and male workers, which gives the possibility for both women and men to also take care of their dependents. And then also, what is important is to introduce targets for women serving in management and on boards of companies. Switzerland, for instance, has a new legislation since 2021, where there is a benchmark that at least 30% of women on the boards of directors and 20% for the executive boards of listed companies need to be women. So these companies, they have until 2030 to reach this benchmark, and it concerns about 250 companies in our country. And then the last very important element is the implementation of equal pay for equal work or work of equal value, which I will explain a little bit more in detail. Next slide, please. To ensure equal pay for work of equal value, we must have binding laws. And in our country, all companies with 100 or more employees must carry out an equal pay analysis. The method used should be compliant with scientific and legal norms. And the government provides employers with a standard analysis tool, free of charge, named Logip. And this analysis would have to be reviewed by an approved independent third party, like an audit firm, and the results communicated both to the employees and also to the shareholders of that company. Next slide, please. So this standard analysis tool that Switzerland provides, Logip, is a reliable, free, anonymous, secure, and easy to use tool. I invite you to check it yourselves. You see the web address. It is very accessible. For these types of equal pay analysis, transparency is a key element. Therefore, all technical details about the methods used as well as the instructions are publicly available. Employers themselves can check their wage practice within a few hours and see whether they comply with the requirement of equal pay for women and men. Logip is also available in several languages, in the official languages of our country, German, French, and Italian, and also in English. And most importantly, the confidentiality is respected with this tool. This means that the data remains with the company and the results are not transmitted to any third party. Logip, this application, it has been internationally recognized as a good practice, both by the United Nations and also by the Equal Pay International Coalition. Next slide, please. As this tool is widely used, the authorities have received feedback from Swiss companies. In a survey that dates already a few years back, many companies showed interest in that tool. 2/3 of the companies think that the government measures aimed at the enforcement of pay equality make sense. This shows us the importance of having equal pay laws and measures. The survey also showed that the self-tests are effective. Many companies that carry out such a self-test make adjustments, usually raising women's wages. Next slide, please. We have here, on that next slide, we have here some positive feedback from large Swiss companies like an ICT company of Coca-Cola and a Swiss or an auditing firm active in our country. So in conclusion, gender equality in the workplace is not only a matter of justice towards women, but helps the whole economy. Indeed, as women make up to 50% of the workforce, we need them to participate fully in the economy and ensure that their rights are fulfilled. Equal pay is one of the key elements towards gender equality in the workplace, and I hope that Switzerland's self-test tool inspired you and that we together, with EPIC, can make equal pay for work of equal value a reality also in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Konstantin, for taking us through Switzerland's experience on equal pay for work of equal value. In fact, Switzerland held the chair of the Equal Pay International Coalition when it first came into being and steered it very ably. I mean, I heard you mention some key, well, a theme that seems to be emerging in your presentation, which is the overrepresentation of women in underpaid jobs in the care economy being a contributing factor to women's relative position in the labour market. You said very clearly that addressing discrimination is not a choice, but an obligation that's incumbent on all of us. You outlined some very concrete measures towards addressing these persistent pay gaps, including the equalization of care leave, including paternity and parental leaves. You mentioned flexible working arrangements and measures to promote women's leadership, particularly on boards of companies. And of course, the Logip tool, which is proving to be a real asset to companies who are working on improving, the closing of the gender pay gap. So thank you very much for those observations. From Switzerland, we move next to Sweden. We were going to Italy, but Italy will be joining us later. So if I can ask, Mr. Bengt Lindbeck, if he is ready to join us already. with his examples of gender mainstreaming into public policies and programs. So, back to you.
Thank you so much. And hi and good afternoon to all of you. Dear organizers, colleagues, excellencies, and friends. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be back in Uzbekistan, and it's also a pleasure to be in a panel like this. So thank you for that. My name is Bengt Lyngbeck, and I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the Swedish gender policy. Could I? Next slide, please. Yes, very good. Thank you. Yes, Sweden has a strong commitment to gender equality and promoting a gender perspectives in all areas of society. As mentioned, this means considering the needs and experience for both women and men, but also in policy and decision making, working to address gender-based inequalities, and of course discrimination. The government implemented a range of policies and programs to promote gender equality. This includes gender mainstreaming, which means gender perspectives in all policies and activities. The government also implemented quotas. Talked about the experience in Switzerland, and we have quotas to ensure equal representations of women and men in politics and in corporate boards. Of course, we also offer parental leave to both mothers and fathers to promote equal distribution of caregiving and responsibilities. We also focus on combating gender-based violence and harassment. Next, please. In this very short presentation, I have been asked to touch upon 4 different perspectives. It's gender mainstreaming, gender budgeting, and parental policy, gender in the labor market. Next, please. But first, just a few words about where I'm from. This is a map of Scandinavia and Sweden, size-wise similar to Uzbekistan, very much so actually. But on the other hand, we have just a third or less than a third of the population. Today we are very dependent on trade and exports, but just 100 years ago we were a very poor country, agricultural country. Today less than 2% of the labor force are active in agriculture. So that's a dramatic change for us. Next, please. Gender equality. Well, the overarching goal of government's gender equality policy is that women and men are to have the same power and shape the society and their own lives. Already in 2004, we adopted a strategy for gender mainstreaming in the government offices. We have 6 sub-goals. That is even distribution of power and influence, economic equality. It's about the same opportunities and conditions regarding paid work, equal education. Women and men, girls and boys should have the same opportunities and conditions regarding education. And of course, personal development. Also, even distribution of unpaid housework and provision of care. Equal health And last but not least, men's violence against women must end. Yes, that's the next slide, I see. Gender mainstreaming. Well, as you can see on this slide, it is mandatory in preparation of all government decisions. So this is in the government offices. All statistics are sex desegregated. We also have some special pinpointed processes. Talk about budget, legislation, governance, EU and international matters. So this is based on the understanding that gender equality is created where decisions are made, resources are allocated, and norms are created. So these perspectives have to be incorporated into all decision-making processes. Next, please. And it's kind of the same approach when it comes to gender budgeting. A lens of gender should be applied throughout the budget processes, in directives, in budget circulars. Gender budgeting for more efficient policy and better use of resources. On the picture there you can see in the middle the current Minister of Finance, Elisabeth Svantesson. Next, please. Well, how did we reach this, or where we are today? We usually say that we had 3 very important reforms during the 70s, so that's 50 years ago. And that is about separate income taxation, public childcare reform, and parental leave benefits. These reforms promoted gender equality and also, of course, increased women's prospects to have the same opportunities as men to enter the labor market. Women could gain access to employment and reach greater financial independence. So with these reforms, wives were no longer considered part of the husband's income, so separated. And the second point is the development of affordable childcare available to all. A very important reform. And of course, parental allowance. Some results. Next, please. Of course, we have challenges. I'm giving you an overview about the situation today. We have we received 480 days paid parental leave for each child. And as you can see here, women take 70% and men 30% of the total days. It's the same where we have parental leave when the child is ill. It's not equal either. Having said that, I should also say that we have 90 days are reserved for each parent and cannot be transferred to the other one. So 90 days have to be taken on one, otherwise they will disappear. 30 days can be used as what we call double days. The parents can stay at home together. Next slide, please. Yes, you can see what I just said. Okay, next slide. This is a chart with some statistics in minutes about the unpaid housework. This is published by the government office. The black bar shows women and the gray one men. And as you can see here to your left, women dominate cooking, setting the table, contact with relatives, with friends, cleaning, making beds, you know, very common housework, while men spend their time with taking care of vehicles, household finances, repairs. So this is very stereotypical roles we have still, although we have evened them out quite a bit during all this period. But we probably need to do more. When it comes to the labor market, let's give you a brief introduction. You can see this is the percentage of the population that are actually in employment. So we usually calculate 6% less for women than for men. Next, please. This slide says the same thing, but this is another age group that's more equivalent or relevant to the Swedish perspective. You can also see here that 85% of the labor force are women and 90% men. And as I said, then employment rate around 78, and then versus 83. Here you can also see in the, oh, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. I don't know if you can see the small statistics in the box at the bottom there, but there you can also see why people are absent from work. And you can also see that women tend to be absent more than men in regard to taking care of children. So next, please. The public employment services, or as all the other agencies in Sweden, assigned with gender equality goals. And we have had a challenge and still have a challenge where women are not able or not offered to take part as much as men in, for example, active labor market programs. So they were assigned, employment offices were assigned with some goals or objectives a few years ago. Next, please. I think my time is up here, but just a quick picture here of a slide with the 30 largest occupations. This is 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And I can say that it is similar to what you have already discussed here. Women tend to work in well, first of all, the blue bars are women and the kind of purplish are men. And the top there you can see that most women work in care occupations. It could be everything from daycare to elderly care to teachers and so forth. On the other hand, these 30 largest occupations when it comes to men, it's dominated by woodwork, carpenters, truck drivers, management, and so forth. Next, please. I'll go to the last slide. I think I have used my time. Just to sum up, I would say that Sweden is a country of opportunities with good quality of life and the good gender perspective, good equality. But of course, we have challenges. We have laws and customs prohibit discrimination that we need to work harder with, of course. For example, according to the Equal Opportunities Act, employers may not discriminate any employee or job applicant who has been or will be on parental leave. I think that was a very important law to actually adopt. Still, 79% of women are in work compared to EU, which is more than 30% less. I would also like to mention at last that we have a highly developed social welfare system that makes it easier to combine work and family life. I talked about the daycare expansion. We usually come in top on the global gender gap report among the Scandinavian countries like Norway or Iceland or Finland and so forth. So thank you for the opportunity and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bengt, and thank you for sharing with us Sweden's experience of putting into operation some of that gender mainstreaming at the core of public policies that Mansour was also talking about in his presentation. I think you outlined some of the critical areas for action, or for policy action, including health, education, and tackling some of the very persistent and stubborn social norms that shape our economies and the ability to participate in our economies. And even in Sweden, despite all of this progress, we still see the gender-based occupational segregation. The time use survey showed us that this persists in households as in the economy. There's still lots of work to do, but I think I heard you saying that we do have the tools that can enable us to make this progress. I'm delighted now that we can move to Italy as Sonia is able to join us. So welcome Sonia Malaspina, who is the HR Director of Danon Italy and Greece. Sonia created and launched the parental policy to support parents in the workplace of Danon, and that policy is now global. So over to you, Sonia.
Thank you, and good morning. It is a pleasure for me to be with you today and share my experience in the private sector in Italy in creating a gender equal workplace. It is an experience of 12 years, and I've collected significant relevant data that I would like to share with you. First of all, I present myself. I'm HR Director at Danone in Italy. It is a company of about 500 people and families. They are spread all around Italy. It's a commercial workforce and is an headquarter workforce. The headquarter is based in Milan. When I joined 12 years ago, I had a female population of 50%, and I found them really demotivated, angry, afraid of having a maternity. And so I asked myself and my managing director, what are we doing with 50% of our population totally disconnected from company results, objective? We are losing great human capital. So he has given me free space to introduce a policy that is the parental policy that was applied in Danone Italy, and then in 2017 became the global Danone parental policy. It's a policy that the ambition of the policy is to neutralize the effect of the maternity, because listening female women in 2011, they were really angry about the fact that maternity implied difference in salaries. So a huge pay gap between men and women implied stop of any career, because coming back was full of uncertainty, and so a great penalization and sense of guilt for women. So the policy is based on 4 pillars. The first pillar is cost nothing. So every company can implement it. Every company, no problem of size, of resources. The first thing that I do from 2011 is to meet all women that are back from maternity leave in their workplace, telling them that their experience is very important. So the experience of care, of children care, is meaningful even for the employer, even for Danone. And so we can go on the, just to tell you on the slide 3, in which I show the 4 pillars of my policy. Okay, so the psycho-emotional proximity to moms that are back from maternity leave in the workplace is essential. We need to valorize care in our workplace, not only children care, but also care for ourselves, care for others, for elderly people. That is a huge thing that we will face in the next year with the aging of our population. Okay, so this first pillar is easy to implement, but is very meaningful, because I bring some data about the competencies that are developed during the care experience, during the leave, both for men and for women, because you will see my parental also extend to fathers. But I will show you later. I will go through the 4 pillars at the moment. The second pillar, of course, is economical, because in Italy there is a protection of the salary in the compulsory leave, but then in the facultative leave, the salary of the mom goes to 30% of the salary. So it is a huge loss in terms of buying power. So we have introduced all the way to sustain the income of the mom, of the family during the leave, using, for example, the fact of keeping moms in the salary annual review, even if they are on leave, even if they are on maternity leave. Another measure is to give 100% of the bonus to moms, even when they are on leave. And also we have introduced welfare, that is a series of services such as nursery, kindergarten cost, babysitting cost, education cost, that in our legislation are free of tax because they are social services, okay? The third pillar is, of course, organizational. We work by objective and not by presentialism. I started working in a work environment in which they put meetings at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. It is impossible for a mother or for a father to be there, because this means that they are not caring for their children. So having a structure in setting meetings, setting working hours, giving flexibility. So after the pandemic, we all work in smart working, but before, so 10 years ago, was strange in my culture. But we started giving flexibility to fathers, mothers, caregivers. And this is a huge producer of engagement for the people, because they return 300% to the company. Another pillar is also important, is cultural. We have given 20 days of paid leave to dads, because in Italy, when I started the policy, there was just 1 day for the fathers. Can you imagine? Now the legislation in 10 years has improved. The Italian legislation is 10 days of paid leave, but it's still not sufficient. So we are now giving 20 days in compulsory. So dads, men experiment the fact of being out of the company and taking care of the children, experiencing care. The rigorous application of the policy, now we can move to the results, is incredible, not only for social purposes, but also from economical purposes. So we can go on on the next slide, please. Can you move? Next, again. Next, has disappeared. Okay, thank you so much. These are the application of the policy that I will give it to you, because I have published my policy on our website. They are in Italian, so I given to ILO for sharing. The application rigorous of the policy give tremendous results. For example, 100% of moms come back to the workplace, where in Italy we have a great percentage of abandon after the birth of the first child. We have a positive number in terms of natality, a percentage of 8%. It means that when men and women are supported, we fight the great denatality, natality decrease that we are experiencing in my country. 54% of our population, managerial population, is female. And so this is very important, because when I started the policy, it was just 20%. Our goal is to have 50% of women across all the levels, in all the positions. One important data, these are data based 2022, is that among all the promotion of 2022, 60% have gone to women, and 14% to women that are back from the maternity leave. Of course, as I said, 100% of dads compulsory take the paternity. We have reduced the absenteeism rate to 2%, that is very good in our it's very important to have very productive people, very engaged people. Of course, our men with our policy, they can breastfeed. This is very important. This is the best way to nurture the child. And then we have reduced to 0 the pay gap. As I told you, keeping women inside the annual salary review, recognizing bonus during the leave. And last but not least, I have not experienced in my reality great resignation. You know that there is a huge problem of people after the pandemic, people leaving workplaces because they are not meaningful, they are not attached. And we don't have, we have the ability to retain the key people, even if our salary are median in the market, are not best paid, but competitors cannot steal our talent, because our talent and our people have great policies with them. Last but not least, but for me it's very important, in the immersing digital economy, I'm able to attract talents of the new generation. The first thing that the new talents entering in the workplace, they ask is, men and women, what is the policy of work-life balance in this company? Are you working in a flexible way? Are you able to sustain my life? So this is a total different approach from what I have experienced when I entered the workplace in the 90s. So for me, this is not just something that we do because it's justice, it's social justice, but it's also economical benefit for the company. So the investment that you give in this policy, the economical investment, has a very great return on the investment for the whole company. And I don't know if I have still more time. Have you seen my objective is my approach is very pragmatical. And I think really that every company can adopt, of course, also adapting the policies to local legislation, to the culture, and to, but this is for me, and also I say, I encourage company to enter in this journey because it's economical sustainable, but also socially sustainable. And this metric prove me every day after 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I mean, I think the results that you presented at the end there were so impressive, where you've moved from finding, you know, workforce that was 50% dissatisfied and disconnected to one where you're able to really retain and your human talent and make Danone a place where people want to work. And one of the striking things I think you said there was how, you know, you see time spent perhaps outside of the formal workplace. Caring is actually very relevant to the skills and qualities that are needed in the workplace and how you take that you know, into account. So thank you very much for sharing that experience. I think next we're off to Norway. Time is not really on our side. So unfortunately for the speakers that follow, we might have to ask you just to be a little bit concise. I'm sorry, it's always a little bit unfair. I had on my list, you know, Mr. Bjorn Halvorsen via video. Is this correct? I'm not sure if the video...
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Could I have the slide, please? I'm asked to give a brief presentation about the pathways to gender equality in the labor market in Norway. And I would like to take a very brief historical approach to this, just because that this has been developed over time. That's the simple reason. Next slide, please. Next one. I will start 135 years ago with the first female worker strike in Norway. This was match factory workers. They had, you can see a picture of them there, many of them quite young girls. They had very low wages, long working days, no breaks, bad working conditions, unhealthy and often dangerous work because of the chemistry involved. So they were brave and they went for strike for the first time in Norway. And they also improvised the first female labor union for that occasion. And they got support from people, from male trade union leaders. And after 1 month in strike, they achieved some improvements, a bit higher wages, a bit more regulated working time and breaks, and a kind of first factory inspection was set up. So these girls and women, they were the front runners in Norway. And it illustrates that labor conflicts and labor unions have been important drivers to the history. Next slide, please. In the first part of the former century, it was a huge female revolution and emancipation in Norway, as in Western world else. The big question then was universal suffrage for women. They reached it in 1913, 15 years later than men. This was the big issue. And also working time regulations. They worked for shorter working time, first 10 hours, then 8 hours a day. A factory inspection was established, and also important, child protection laws were introduced. Both child work was forbidden, and there was introduced support for mothers by birth and maternity. That was the start of this. And also a widow's pension was established. So this was the start, so to say. Next slide, please. Next one. Well, I will make a jump to the 1950s. No, back again. I will make a jump to the 1970s for the female revolution in the 1970s. These girls and women, they was opposed to their mothers in the 50s, the trad wife, home working wife, and they wanted a different life and more self-determination than their mothers. They took education and more qualitative jobs. They claimed maternity pay and kindergartens, as you see in the picture right-hand side. They were loud and proud and visible. They were the generation of my wife. Next slide, please. Role models are important in politics, in business and workplaces, and in culture and sports as well. Such female frontrunners have shoved the pathways in Norway, and they have broken a lot of glass ceilings. This was the first so-called women's government in Norway, 1986, for the first time led by the female prime minister, Gro Harlem Brundtland, known in the UN. She's known in the UN system, and there were as many female ministers and as men. And these frontrunners and glass ceiling breakers, they introduced and pushed on a lot of reforms in Norway, which we benefit from these days. Next slide, please. A very brief summing up the last 40 years then. What important things? Education evolution has been going on all the time, most distinct for girls and women. Nowadays, 60% of the students are women. Full kindergarten coverage. 100% of all children between 1 and 6 years have a right to place in kindergartens. Free access to legal abortion. That has been a struggle and a big combat during the years. It's more silent now because it's established, but it's an important factor. Free universal social security and sickness absence also is very important, and not to forget parental allowance with 100% compensation for 49 weeks, or by choice 80% compensation for 59 weeks. And there are quotas for the father, the mother, and common quotas. last but not least, Equality and Anti-Discrimination Act and Ombud. These are very important institutions in Norway. All kind of discrimination is forbidden by law, and the Ombud follow it up, monitor, and people can complain to the Ombud. These broad reforms, I think, have been good investments for Norway and for Norwegians, men and women. Next slide, please. And it has been given broad outcomes. You can see that it has been an increasing female employment during the last 50 years. The blue line shows for women and the red line for men. And now you can see it's not a gap at all. 5% employment gap between men and women nowadays, by 30% gap in 1972. And the employment rate is among the highest in the world. Right-hand side is the decreasing gender gap. It's average gender wage compared to average men's wage. And you can see that is now the average gender pay gap is about 5%. Oh, excuse me, 10%. 11 to be exact. Last slide, please. Last slide. The ongoing issues and challenges these days. We still have involuntary part-time work in Norway, and it's as double frequent among women than among men. There are in Norway as well still some typical male jobs and female jobs, as illustrated by the pictures. Some female immigrant outsiders in the society and in the labor market, especially. That's an issue too. They have struggled with the language, often traditional family roles, low education. So this is a issue at very important nowadays. Also, social dumping or informal labor exists in Norway and in the regulated Norway, and it has increased the last few years because of the new internet-based economy, employer contracts, short-time contracts, and so on. And the present government, together with the labor union, they are combating this development very eagerly nowadays. Sexual harassment exists in the labor market in Norway as well, and there is a lot of effort to prevent this. The last thing I would like to mention is that some boys are left behind. Girls perform better in school than boys nowadays, as an average, and some boys are dropping out, some even into marginalization and even into criminal activities. So how to prevent these boys' marginalization is a new issue at stake these days. So I think some of these things you can recognize in Uzbekistan as well, and I know you do. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Bjorn, for sharing Norway's experience. And I think we saw from you, looking at the history of Norway, from moving from bad working conditions to very much the decent work situation, about the importance of the political emancipation and participation of women, leading towards the economic inclusion and empowerment, the role of unions and social dialogue. We heard from you the importance of acknowledging diversity amongst women as well, and making sure that measures that are put in place to promote equality of opportunity also take account of the different circumstances and situations of women. Heard also that, of course, promoting gender equality is good for women and men, but we need to be careful that in promoting gender equality, that means taking account of potential risks of marginalization and taking measures to address them. Again, those persistent challenges you also shared around occupational segregation, around care responsibilities, etc., and the impact that this has and the need for this still to be addressed in Norway. So thank you very much for that. From Norway, we're now moving to Germany, but Germany and Uzbekistan, I think. Very pleased to welcome Olga Kirichenko, who's a portfolio manager of GIZ here in Uzbekistan, and who's going to give us some best practice examples in promoting gender equality and women's empowerment through projects on the ground. So over to you, Olga.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Olga Kirichenko, and I would like to present you some examples from our work from the ground. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. GIZ is the German Agency for International Cooperation, and we are working on behalf of German government. GIZ is working in Uzbekistan since 1992, and we are having 22 projects currently under 4 priority topics. It's peace and social protection, health, climate and energy, and sustainable economical development. 100% of our projects are all GG1. It means all our projects are planned and implemented gender sensitive. Next slide, please. Last year, German government implemented the feminist development policy. Next slide, please. I'm gonna shorten it up, shortcut. So here you see our priority core areas, and you can also see that the feminist development policy is an overarching topic. It's cross-cutting. It goes through all the sectors. Feminist development policy is a lever for all our managerial processes and priorities. We work on feminist topics not only in our projects, it's also part of our core teams within GIZ. Every country we're working in has a gender team where we develop our gender topics, and every project has a gender focal point to ensure that all our projects are worked with a gender-sensitive approach. Next slide, please. Our work is based on the 3 R's, which we took from our Swedish colleagues. That are rights, resources, and representation. The first R is realizing rights, and our goal is to realize rights of all women and girls in their diversity. The second R is that we recognize that discriminatory power structures lead to unequal and unjust distribution of resources. So we are working that women have resources of land, digital technologies, and especially finance. For example, microcredits to empower their businesses. With representation, the aim is to ensure that women are equally involved in all our decision-making processes at all levels. For example, they must be able to participate in international negotiations, in development of new strategies, and design of new projects. Now I would like to present you 2 projects worldwide from India and Southern African countries, because at the moment we don't have projects in Uzbekistan who are totally dedicated to gender. That's why I would like to give you this example so we can see where we can move further. Next slide, please. In Southern African countries, we have a project which on gender-based violence against women and girls. Between half and 2/3 of all women already have experienced violence and gender-based violence. Intimate partner violence by a man is the most common of them. Our projects focus on fighting harmful social cultural norms to prevent gender-based violence before it happens. For example, in Lesotho, a smartphone app was developed which informs women about their rights, help them, and there is even an emergency button if gender violence occurs. A flagship in Zambia works with religious and traditional actors to raise awareness on gender-based violence prevention. That includes even discussions on sacred scripts that touches gender relations. In South Africa, cooperation with media aims to overcome negative gender stereotypes and increase women representation in media. Next slide, please. Second example comes from India and deals with economic empowerment of women. This program has two components, incubation and acceleration. Incubation focuses on idea stage entrepreneurs, helping them to convert their idea, going step to step, where taking them by the hand until they really register their own enterprise, which is like the final step of our help. Acceleration focuses on growth of already existing entrepreneurs and businesses who are looking to scale up their operations and revenues. Our support covers critical business concepts, customized support through mentorship, and accesses the market opportunities and credit linkages. Here we see again resources, representation. Next slide, please. Now we are coming to Uzbekistan. And the first project I would like to introduce you is the support for economic reforms and sustainable economic development in regions of Uzbekistan. In February 2023, we started to support 4 IT projects in Andijan, Namangan, Nukus, and Tashkent. We provided computer classrooms. This project focuses especially on women, girls, young people, and people with disabilities. 2 of the projects fully focuses on training of young girls to help young people, women, girls, and people with disabilities to improve their chances on the labor market through computer literacy. Next slide, please. The second component of the same project works with Society of the Disabled. Bernina Nukus is in Karakal, Pakistan, is a Society of the Disabled and has 80 women who are disabled, and half of them cannot even leave their homes. The project provided society with different types of high-quality sewing machines and tables. Women with disabilities can work without going out of home, and we give also young girls the opportunity to learn sewing skills and later to earn some income with these crafts. One of the waivers was even able to start her own business. With the help of a donated sewing machine, she first taught 11 young girls and then expanded her horizon and opened her own sewing shop. Society of Disabled is also managed by a woman. Next slide, please. Our next very interesting project is sustainability and value creation in agricultural supply chains. We simply call it the Cotton Project. In 2022, the project initiated a fashion incubator, the first one of this kind in Uzbekistan. 13 young girls were provided professionalized corporate development and business concept of startups, network with other companies and industry. For 1 year, these 13 incubatees undergo weekly lessons on business planning, product development, and business creation. Maybe some of you heard that last week was Uzbekistan Fashion Week, and one of these young women participated with her fashion show. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to present you a component of our Eco-Aral Sea project, capacity building of the potential of women in the Aral Sea region by involving them in sustainable agribusiness. Eco-Aral, in partnership with Association Women in Agrarian Sectors, held a conference on strengthening the potential of women in the Aral Sea region by involving them in sustainable agribusiness. We conducted trainings for women in the region with the aim to increase the efficiency of land use through efficient use of waste for production of compost. Our goal is to connect the women project with the sustainable development. All our efforts are for improving the lives of women and the environmental situation in the Aral Sea region. That was my shortcut. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Olga, and thank you also for the shortcut, by the way. But
and it's very freezing inside of here. Is it possible somehow to decrease the temperature?
Okay, hopefully we can warm, you know, the room up as well. But I'm continuing on with the presentations as well. Thank you for showing us how GIZ is taken forward as well, the German government's feminist development policy, resting on these three pillars of rights, resources, and representation. And it was also fascinating to see the work that you're doing in relation to disability inclusion and focusing on women with disabilities and their inclusion in the labour market. You also, as many speakers have touched on, the important issue of addressing gender-based violence and harassment, including sexual harassment, and the work that you're doing in South Africa and Lesotho. This was another important theme that comes up time and time again. So next, we're going to Turkey, and I'm pleased to welcome Aysin Sayin, who has been appointed People, Culture and Sustainability Leader at WPP Turkey and Group since July 2019. So over to you without any further.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, ILO, for inviting me and my dear friend Özge. What I share today, our experience from the Turkey, we create our great international partners, ILO, UNDP, World Bank, and IFC, on gender equality. I studied gender in my master's degree 20 years ago, and last 20 years I've been working inclusiveness in different sectors, academia, non-governmental organizations, and last 15 years in the private sector. What I'm doing to sustain inclusiveness business in my company and their value chain. Next slide, please. All slides. Okay. I represent a retail company. Actually, I finished my work from WPP 1 month ago, which is a global company and communication sector in communication. Now I've been working for the retail industry back home again, because before the WPP, I worked retail and textile sector, the same company. We focused on providing affordable and quality products to our customers. We are operating in Turkey and 16 other countries. I would like to give very briefly our sustainability approach at the slide. We are conducted for main categories: democracy in workplace, environmental impact, value chain sustainability, and community impact. Next slide, please. I'm focused on democracy in workplace in my presentation. Next slide. Okay, I think it's the right slide. Under the democracy at workplace, we do not tolerate any discrimination based on color, gender, religion, marital status, sexual orientation, political opinion or affiliation, ethnic identities, health status, family responsibilities, union activity or membership, disability or age. Democracy in workplace means fostering a culture of respect, collaboration, and fairness. It means promoting work-life balance and providing support systems that enable both men and women to success in their careers. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Under the supply chain sustainability, we carry out our practices in order to improve the environmental, social, and economic impact of our products during the manufacturing process, as well as to create long-term environmental, social, and economic value, to maintain continuity of our businesses, to protect the integrity of our brands, to manage efficient source and business cost, and to encourage our suppliers to do same. Within the scope of our sustainability supply chain practices, we have updated the contracts with our suppliers with code of ethics and auditing process almost 15 years ago. We informed our suppliers through the handbook, training, and consultancy. We have begun to implement the social compliance, audit, and monitoring. In that time, we worked with the ILO on decent work, gender mainstreaming, and social compliance in value chain. Gender equality in the supply chain is not just a matter of the fairness, it's a matter of economic sense and sustainable development. We cannot achieve true sustainability without acknowledging and addressing the gender-based discrimination. Next slide, please. Women make up significant role of the global workforce, yet they continue to face discrimination, even if the Nordic company and even if the everywhere is actually in the global. Next slide, please. To create a truly sustainable supply chain, we must ensure that women have equal access to education, training, and employment opportunities. It means promoting diverse and inclusiveness all levels of the supply chain, from the top of bottom. It means creating a workplace culture that values and supports the contributions of all employees, regardless of their gender. Gender-responsive procurement strategies and supplier diversity initiatives can play a crucial role in promoting equality and empowering women-owned businesses. Next slide, please. Regarding with women empowerment in the supply chain, effective approach should be holistic, integrated, and strategic. Next slide, please. Some actions. Companies, we have to understand the issues women face in our supply chain to manage risk and ensure long-term supply chain resilience. Raising awareness of our suppliers, gender equality no longer an at-home topic, but is essential to achieving decent work conditions. And good gender disaggregated data collection is fundamental and meaningful to change in global supply chain. Now I would like to give one case from Turkey. The program name is Good for Businesses. Next slide, please. We act to benefit women-owned businesses, and through our supply chain, we also enable to influence women empowerment across the market by collaborating, communicating, and clearly with other companies, our competitors, partners, international organizations, and policymakers. We believe inclusive sourcing is a business model. The program aims to raise women-owned businesses' productivity and business performance. The challenges are the same in the global. Next slide, please. Here is the challenge. Limited access to capital, limited access to market, client, buyers, supply and distribution channel, poor integration into the business networks, culture and skill gap, insufficient support system so that women can manage dual responsibilities, childcare, elderly care, and so on. Next slide, please. For the program, we create a comprehensive 12 weeks capacity building program for the women entrepreneur. The aim of the program was to increase the participating women business knowledge and soft skills, as well as to facilitate their access to finance and networks. We organize a meeting with the buyers. We organize a vendor forum for the women entrepreneur. Investing in women-led businesses and sourcing from the women entrepreneurs means tapping into the larger and more diverse pool of suppliers. Investing in women suppliers also means creating and improving economic opportunities for women and communities. To achieve gender equality in supply chain and democracy in workplace, we must work together. It requires collaboration between government, business, civil society, individuals, and international organizations. Let us recognize that gender equality is not just a women issue, it's a human rights issue, it's a democracy issue. By embracing gender equality, we not only create more inclusive society, but we also unlock the full potential of our economies in local and global. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ihsan, and thank you again for sharing the spirit of promoting culture and respect and fairness in workplaces, particularly in throughout global supply chains, and for sharing with us some of the challenges that face women entrepreneurs and the action that you're taking to address some of those challenges. I think you also, this experience that you've shared of promoting gender equality through global supply chains will certainly stand Uzbekistan in good stead when the Better Work program starts here as well. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. Next, we move to the International Trade Union Confederation, and I'd like to invite Sylvia Komachi, if she's online.
Yes, I'm here.
Advisor at the International Trade Union Confederation based in Brussels. Sylvia?
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of the ITUC, this very important conference, and to speak about the role of the trade union to foster gender equality. And we all know that we are living in a multiple crisis era. We have the pandemic, the war, the inflation, climate change. And while this is a crisis that affects us all, not all are affected in the same way. And women have been particularly hit by the crisis, especially young women, women of color, women migrant workers, indigenous women, women in the informal economy, including domestic workers and women with disability. If we look at the ILO data, the most recent estimate, there were 30 million fewer women in employment in 2021 compared to 2019. And this obviously shows that women's working life will be disrupted over a long period of time unless appropriate measures are adopted. So this is why our movement call strongly for a new social contract, which is rooted in a gender transformative agenda for recovery and resilience. This new social contract embodies demand on the creation of 575 million new and decent jobs by 2030, and the formalization of at least 1 billion informal workers on rights and fair wage, universal social protection, equality and inclusion. And these are crucial if we want to go towards the realization of the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, please. So the care economy, as we have been also listening from different speakers, is certainly crucial to realize our ambition of women participation to the labor market and on building a fair and more inclusive society. The ILO, again, estimates that a global investment in universal childcare and long-term care will create 280 million jobs by 2030 and another 90 million by 2035. 2/3 of the global care workforce are women, and too many of them are still trapped in underpaid, precarious, and informal jobs. That's why we call for public investment of adequate level of national GDP in the care economy, creating millions of new decent jobs for women, enabling women effective participation in the broader economy, and ensuring universal access to quality public health, care, and education service. And the implementation of comprehensive care economy framework based on the recognition, reduction, and redistribution of unpaid care work with income, reward for care work, and more and decent job for women, and ensure representation of care workers through collective bargaining and social dialogue. Just at the end of last year, we published a report that presents country-specific data on the job creation potential and gender equity implication of additional investment by percentage of gross domestic product, GDP, and it highlights inspiring example where trade unions have been working to put comprehensive care system in place. Like, for example, in Canada, during the COVID-19 crisis, the labor movement built on decades of campaigning to win major investment in care, expanding public care infrastructure, and establishing national child care system. Same in Spain, trade unions have successfully pushed for the country to be the first to follow the EU Work-Life Balance Directive, and now they're demanding increased public spending and improved working conditions for care workers and better quality care. Next slide, please. Then the pandemic and also its related emergency measure triggered a surge in gender-based violence and harassment, including domestic violence in the form of physical, psychological, economic abuse. And this has a devastating impact on women's life. And it also brings about adverse economic consequence on women's livelihood. Also, our ITC recent report says that 97% of the trade unions are working to support the ratification and implementation of ILO Convention C190, and then 91% of the trade union survey are engaged in social dialogue to align C190 with national law and policy, and 67% have negotiated workplace policy or collective bargaining agreement. So the ratification and effective implementation of C190 and the recommendation 206 to collective bargaining, it's urgent more than ever. And in this respect, I would like to highlight the important work also of the Global Union Federation, bringing, for example, gender-based violence and harassment provision in the global framework agreement with multinational enterprises such as H&M, Tesco, Unilever, and that's just some of the examples. Like, for example, H&M have put together a working group with the involvement of the trade union and industry all to develop a code of conduct for the supplier in preventing and addressing sexual harassment. And so these are, if you go to the next slide, please, there are just some example of the work we are doing. We have a campaigning on ratifying ILO Convention C119, and then if you also go to the next slide, we can just see some picture of the work that been conducting around the world to support the ratification and implementation of ILO Convention C119 on violence and harassment at the workplace. Next slide, please. So equality and inclusion are also at the heart of peace, freedom, and democracy. So during the ITUC Fourth Women Conference that we held last year, we could hear a variety of experience ranging from country at risk to other countries where democracy are in place. But still in the latter one, we see that women workers and most vulnerable workers can suffer from marginalization and segregation, often brought by far-right political movement. So therefore, we call for reaffirming the commitment of trade unions to shaping a world free from all forms of discrimination based on gender, class, race, ethnicity, ideology, religion, sexual orientation and gender identity, or other ground, and the intersection of those. We also reaffirm the centrality of trade union international solidarity and engagement for a right-based development model with a renewed multilateral system. And then also we insist that trade union organizations ensure women equal participation and full involvement in all efforts for the maintenance and promotion of peace and security, including in peace negotiation and in peace process. Next slide, please. Then, very important, we have been listening this also, especially from the representative of, I think I see that the slide here, it's still on the, it's the next slide. All right, I think it's still one, because it's on equal pay. Yes. Okay, so equal pay, very, very important. As I say, we were listening from other speakers as well. We know that around the world, women are paid average 20% less than men. And if you want, as is enshrined in SDG 8, unemployment is a work that enshrined equal pay among this target, we need to take measure, including pay transparency, based on the centrality of collective bargaining and social dialogue, to put an end to the gender pay gap. I also would like to say that it's very important that we have minimum living wage, and that in some countries we have seen unions organizations working with government to increase wage for what is called the C sectors, so the care sectors, where women are particularly concentrated, so that we also address the issues of equal pay for work of equal value. Next slide, please. Yeah, on social protection is also key to ensure women access to gender responsive social protection system. We know that around the world, only 46.5%, so less than half of the global population is covered by at least one social protection benefit. And therefore, we must go toward universal and gender responsive social protection system to advance also towards the SDG. And that means that we call for specific policy to close the gender gap in social protection, for example, provision of paid maternity and paternity leave to allow a more equal distribution of family responsibility between men and women in the household. Also, we call for adequate funding on social protection reform through progressive national tax system, for example, or tax reform measure and debt relief. And then finally, we also calling for the establishment of a global social protection fund for the least wealthy countries. Next slide, please. The women also bear the brunt of the climate emergency and are at risk to encounter a further deepening of the already persistent inequality in the labor market. Therefore, we call for the adoption and implementation of gender transformative just transition plan in line with the ILO guideline for a just transition, increasing public investment in the care economy, in renewables, and ensuring access to young women to the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, related education and jobs. And then finally, to ensure environmental and human rights due diligence in business operation and along global supply chains, and to ensure that the wealthiest company in country contribute the most for social investment. Next slide, please. Equitable access to skill development, training, and lifelong learning is also key to promote gender equality and women empowerment. And lifelong learning requires investment at all levels, from preschool through to higher education. Equal access for girls and women at all this level is vital. So education and training strategy with active labor market policy for skilling, reskilling, and upskilling are key to the transition plan in the context of climate and technological shift. However, the gender divide in women access to skill development remains wide, and gender disparity persists in access to technical vocational education and training, TVET, informal and non-formal education and training, as well as apprenticeship and traineeship. And so that's why we need target measure to close the gender digital divide and engagement in social dialogue and collective bargaining to forge and implement lifelong learning and skill development policy. Next slide, please. And then finally, last but not least, it is critical for the future of our workers' movement, but I would say for the future of the society at all, to ensure that its leadership is reflective, representative, and inclusive of its current and future membership and base, which means that trade unions organization needs to ensure the inclusive nature of their structures, agenda, and process, and achieve equal and equitable representation of women in the leadership of the trade union. Trade union also to enhance efforts toward organizing women in all their diversity, as well as other equity-seeking group of workers, including racialized, migrant workers, disabled, and LGBTQI+ workers. And then we also have a commitment now to a minimum of 50% women representation in the decision-making bodies of all I2C affiliates, following the example of I2C affiliate that have already achieved gender parity. We also have a program in the I2C, which is the Women in Leadership Program, which identify women leaders through different affiliates around the world. And we hope that to continue with this program that started last year, and it's continued to create women leaders in our movement. It is up to us to really promote gender equality at the workplace. We have some resources that I provided at the end of the slide. If you can go to the next 2 slides, and especially our report on care economy and C190. And with that, I really thank you for your attention, and thank you very much.
Very much, Sylvia, for taking us through the trade union priorities for promoting gender equality, the new social contract with job social protection and equality and inclusion at its heart, the priorities of investment in the care economy, addressing gender-based violence, equal pay for work of equal value, and the I2C is also a member of EPIC, along with Switzerland, Germany, and Danone as well, who we heard from today, and also the leadership programs that the I2C is implementing. We heard also about the value of social partnership and social dialogue, and with that we're going to move now to Ms. Vestlana Alwich, who is from the Montenegrin Employers Federation, who will tell us a little bit about their work in promoting women in management and business. Over to you.
As a representative of Montenegrin Employees Federation, I am really honored to be part of this great event focused on such important topic. Also, I will use this moment to send big congratulations to ILO and partners in organizing such important event. Montenegrin Employees Federation, or shortly MEF, was founded 21 years ago. We are umbrella and representative employees organization on the national and international level, and we are a social partner to government and trade unions. So that means that we are official representative of interest of employers in our country. In the following slide, I will present a small part of our activities that we implemented in previous years in the field of promotion and support of female entrepreneurship and management. You can go to another slide. On this slide, I will mention just one sentence that is Employers Code of Ethics that we adopted in 2005. Which include the principles of UN Global Compact and UN Millennium Development Goals. All other things you can read from a slide, and I believe that organizers will send you all the presentations so you can read later. Next slide, please. This is the list of barriers you can read later, but as you will see, and you can read the combination of business barriers, stereotypes, traditional role of women in society, balance or problem regarding balancing family and professional life, etc., etc. Please go to another slide. Thank you very much. Strategic support for the empowerment of women was confirmed in 2009 when Businesswomen Association of Montenegro was founded with support of MEF. It is the first professional association that gathers women entrepreneurs and managers in Montenegro, and we are very proud on the association's results achieved so far. In the picture below is our first regional conference with about 200 participants in the countries of Western Balkan, and in the upper right is the celebration of 10 years of Businesswomen Association of Montenegro. I and my colleagues are members of management board, and I am one of the founders. Next slide, please. One of the most important activities of Montenegrin Employees Federation is a project supported by ILO, Bureau for Employees Activities, ACTEMP. Within project, we create a report entitled Assessment of the Environment for Women Entrepreneurship in Montenegro, which reviews the main features of the institutional, legislative, and educational system, business climate barriers, as well as possibilities for the development of women entrepreneurship. The environment was estimated by 10 key areas, and each of them gives an overview of the 82 recommendations in total. Next slide, please. National strategy for the development of women entrepreneurship 2015-2020 was adopted in 2015 for the first time in Montenegro. MEF representative was a member of the working group that Ministry of Economy founded on that occasion. At the first meeting of the group, it was highlighted that our report from previous slide would be one of the key documents to be used for the development of the strategy. So everything is clear. Next slide, please. When it comes to our work on creating a favorable business environment, it is very important that we have our representatives at the key bodies, National Social Council that operates on tripartite level, and Competitiveness Council of Montenegro, in which all government ministries and business associations participate. Other things that are important for our work are membership in working groups that different ministries founded with the aim to create new laws, bylaws, etc., and many other things, but we don't have time for them. Next slide, please. MEF was the first organization that came out with data on the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on enterprises in Montenegro. In 2020, with support of ILO, we conducted 2 national surveys, and within the second one, we also produced some data related to women entrepreneurs. On this slide, you can see the key one. You can read it. And I will mention one more important thing. In March 2021, at a session of Women's Parliament organized by the Committee for Gender Equality of the Parliament of Montenegro, MEF representative present this data. The event was broadcast directly by national television so that the general public was also informed about the difficult position of women in business under the influence of COVID. And of course, they understand our very clear message regarding this topic. Next slide, please. During all these years, we have organized a dozen very successful conferences in our country or in a country of the region, and one of them is this one that we held in December 2022, entitled Economic Empowerment of Women, Support for Female Entrepreneurship and Leadership, on topics related to access to finance, digitalization, participation in the IT industry, investing in formal and informal education, as well as networking of young female entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. Last year, ILO supported our project, Young Women Entrepreneurs, implemented through the project founded by the UN Joint SDG Fund. Our target group, as you can see, was young unemployed women interested in starting a business, their own business, and we gave special focus and sent a special call to Roma women, person with disabilities, pregnant women and mothers. For all of them, we organize 5-day-long training courses based on the methodology Get Ahead or Gender and Entrepreneurship Together. Trainings were held in 3 municipalities and were completely free. Later, within the competition for the best business plan, we selected young women who received a grant to start a business. Also, within this project, we filmed 6 videos on Montenegrin and English language, and we organized a great campaign through media and our social networks. We are very proud on this project and the result within this project. Next slide, please. In 2022, MEF and ILO marked the International Day of Women's Entrepreneurship. At the end, the British ambassador to Montenegro awarded certificates to the trainers of the ILO Get Ahead program, and with this act, Montenegro reserved the first 13 trainers of the ILO Global Education Program, among whom are 2 representatives of MEF. I believe that ILO will cooperate with the Employers Organization of Uzbekistan and create a similar project in this country, and also organize that representatives of UN Employers Organization become trainer of this ILO program. Next slide, please. A very useful thing for member companies, for women entrepreneurs and potential women entrepreneurs is online education. Namely, in 2022, MEF signed cooperation agreement with Croatian Chamber of Commerce, and in March this year we start with a free online education program for women entrepreneurs within online platform. The participants of our education are women not only from Montenegro and Croatia, but also from Slovenia. That means 2 EU member countries. Next slide, please. This table is part of the report SME Policy Index, Western Balkan and Turkey 2022, and data shows that Montenegro took the 2nd position regarding the women's entrepreneurship policy. This indicates the successful implementation of the activities within the new strategy for development of women entrepreneurship in Montenegro 2021 to 2024, but also this table represents a confirmation of the great cooperation between the public and private sector in all this process, and we are very proud on contribution of Montenegrin Employees Federation to such a result. Next slide, please. Women make up 51% of Montenegro's population, but remain underrepresented in economic life. Let's see the data. Next slide, please. I will not read it, you can read it, but I will mention just 2 sentences. Women are a better educated part of society, since every year more of them graduate at all levels of education in Montenegro. However, there is no evidence that better education has brought women better jobs or higher salaries, wages. On this slide, the data for Montenegro are data of European Institute of Gender Equality from 2022, and the data for Uzbekistan is ILO data. We can go to another slide. This is also a project supported by ILO, and I just want to mention that, for example, Georgian Employers Organization contacted us, and we gave them this publication, so they use them and create their own. What is this? What is in this publication? We create the first publication on topics that cover ILO Convention regarding non-discrimination, then directives of European Union and national legislation. In second publication, we present good practice and develop a guide for employers. And the third publication is a kind of checklist for companies regarding gender equality and non-discrimination at the workplace. This is only one activity within this project, but we don't have time for explanation of the whole project. Next slide, please. Next slide. Can you go back to previous one? Okay. As a representative of MEF, I was a panelist at the round table on the topic of balance between private and business life, which the Parliament of Montenegro organized in March this year. And this event are regularly every March in Montenegro. Commission for Gender Equality organize event on topic of gender equality regarding violence, economic empowerment of women, whatever. And our representatives participate in that event. They have speeches and send messages to the whole community, and also at such event we build our reputation also. So it is very important that employers organization participate in event on such level. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide. I need to cut. This is a project of women in management. We organize many activities within this project, of course, with support of ILO and Austrian Development Agency. We organize a training cycle for women managers. We create a report based on research. We gave us the first national data regarding the women in managerial position in Montenegro, because at that time we don't have official statistical data on women on the top level in companies and other organizations. I will skip other activities and mention only one important thing, but please go to the next slide. Yes, in our report, we gave top 5 measures for companies to promote women in management. You can read it. This is the answers of our member companies. We also published, and you can find these things, all the data on our website in section publication, because we already create the top 5 recommendation for employers organization, what employers organization need to do regarding more women on management positions. Next slide. As colleagues from Norway say, role models are important, and yes, they are very important. We believe that promoting successful women in decision-making positions can contribute to reducing gender inequality. Therefore, with the support of ILO, we organized the first MEF award ceremony called the Best Women Managers in Montenegro. That's the photo on the left from 2018. After that, we organize all our events by our own, without any support. But what is important is that we award 12 women managers in 4 categories on each event: in business community or in private sector, in public sector, in NGO, in media. We want full stage of successful women, not 1, not 2, then full stage of successful women. We are very proud on the fact that we have announced 32 women as laureates of our awards so far. On the right side, you see the picture from December 2022. At the end, I will just say one thing. Supporting or message, supporting the economic empowerment of women is very important for all employers organizations in Montenegro or in Uzbekistan and in the whole world. It is our contribution to achieving the sustainable development goals and building a democratic society based on gender equality, social responsibility, and an inclusive corporate culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stan, for taking us through the work of the Montenegrin Employers Federation, and really underlying that higher education attainment does not necessarily lead to better outcomes for women, and therefore there are proactive measures that need to be taken. And you've shown us some of the measures, especially those 5 top recommendations that your federation has been taking, and that lessons can be exchanged perhaps between Montenegro and Uzbekistan on those. Finally, but not least, and thank you for your patience, returning to Sylvia Muradova from the World Bank. She's a consultant for the World Bank's Poverty and Equity Program in Central Asia, and is going to tell us a little bit about the priorities for implementation of gender equality policies through the World Bank's program. So over to you to close us.
Thank you very much, dear distinguished guests. It's a pleasure today to discuss the engagement and give you an overview of engagement of World Bank Group on gender equality both globally and in Uzbekistan. I would like to say that the World Bank Group is committed to promote gender equality worldwide, not only in this country, and on the global level, our core document that we are trying to finalize now and is now under preparation is Global Gender Equality Strategy 2024-2030, accelerating gender equality for a sustainable, resilient and inclusive future. World Bank will support innovation, financing and collective action towards 3 main objectives which are outlined in our gender strategy, global gender strategy. First is elevate human capital and end gender-based violence worldwide. The second is expand and enable economic opportunities. And the third is engage women as leaders in each country of the world. And the goal of this strategy is to spark a new thinking and action to accelerate equality while establishing a clear direction of the World Bank Group's public and private work on gender, drawing lessons from progress to date, changes in global economy and emerging challenges. The strategy will also include the main development directions such as climate change, poverty reduction and food insecurity, as well as raising economic growth and productivity. To achieve this, of course, changing mindsets and mobilizing collective action is needed, in addition to technical approach, innovation and financing. Now I would like to discuss a little bit more about our work in Uzbekistan, and would like to announce that we have finalized Uzbekistan country gender assessment, which will be launched officially in June this year. And the gender assessment will guide our operations in the country basically, and will be basically focused on 4 main areas, which are changing norms and confronting harmful stereotypes, human endowments, healthcare and education, economic opportunities, and enhancing women's leadership, voice and agency. And with the next slide, please, I would like to give a little bit of an overview of some achievements that have been done by Uzbekistan over the past 5 years. So Uzbekistan has achieved nearly universal access to primary and secondary education to both boys and girls. The number of expected years of school is presently 12 years. And the figure drops to the equivalent of just 9.1 year for girls and 9.2 years for boys, respectively, after adjusting for the quality of their learning. Thus, the quality of instruction and filling gaps in topics missing in instruction are the most urgent priorities in primary and secondary educations. But the story is a little bit different with respect to early childhood education and tertiary education. Next slide, please. Here I would like to show that overall enrollment in Uzbekistan is approaching balance. The largest remaining gap is still in doctoral level programs. Next slide, please. What we would like to emphasize is that recently struggling with the lowest enrollment rates in ECA region, Uzbekistan is now a rising star. You can see that over the past 5 years, gross tertiary education enrollment rate has been accelerated and rapidly increasing, especially in the past 3 years, starting from 1919 till 2022. You can see there is an increase in children enrolled in preschool education, but still there needs to be some work done to somehow accelerate this dynamic. Next slide, please. A rapid acceleration in the share of women in STEM we can witness, even as enrollment is enrollment is rapidly increasing. So you can see that the share of women among STEM in Uzbekistan is around 36%, and the number has been rapidly increasing over the past 3 years. Next slide, please. However, there is a progress done, but some of Uzbekistan's most pressing gender gaps relate to the labor market. And our survey, listening to citizens of Uzbekistan, has shown that the reasons for non-work among the unretired, especially for women, is home and care work. This you can see 75, it is a 75%. Next slide, please. Another area that everybody needs to focus on, all the, I think, donors and the government, and it is an issue worldwide, is that women are paid much less than men, and gender wage gap remains at around 36% over the past 5 years. Next slide, please. We were trying to understand what could be the key reasons for such a trend, and we have conducted 2 very interesting experiments, one in Uzbekistan and one in all countries of Central Asia, which predominantly, if you can see, is linked to discrimination and occupational segregation on the labor market. We can see that there is a still strong discrimination, gender discrimination in hiring in all countries of Central Asia and in Uzbekistan. And there is, of course, occupational segregation. What we have done predominantly with, I will just give an example, small example of the experiment. We have constructed fake CVs for candidates, both males and females. All characteristics were the same, and we started applying these CVs on the labor market of Uzbekistan to the main job boards in Uzbekistan, and receiving callbacks after that. And we have found out that women get much more callbacks in female-dominated jobs, whereas males are getting much more callbacks and actually getting jobs than women. Next slide, please. We have found out that bias actively discouraged labor market and economic opportunities for women in Uzbekistan. So our listening to citizens of Central Asia surveys showed that when we asked our respondents whether they think whether women should earn less than men to sustain peace in the family, you can see that around 34% in Uzbekistan and 40% in Kyrgyzstan and around 20% in Kazakhstan think that women should earn less than men to sustain peace in the family. And the second question that we were asking actually whether women should spend less time working outside of home than men to dedicate more time to home tasks or household chores. And here we can see that across all Central Asian countries, more than 70% of respondents think that yes, women should spend less time working outside home than men to dedicate more time for household chores. Next slide, please. This is a small illustration of gender imbalances in labor market. We can see, for instance, that the share of female judges is much less across regions in Uzbekistan than male judges. And when we look at the share of men and women in total employment by type of economic activity, we can see that women are working predominantly in female-dominated occupations or sectors of economy, whereas men in men-dominated sectors of economy. Next slide, please. And here I would like to discuss a little bit more about women's roles, rights, and treatment. We were asking here within our World Bank project, Rural Infrastructure Development Project, whether a husband is justified in hitting or beating his wife. And we found out that approximately more than 20% supports these views. If woman goes out without telling her husband, or argues with him, it's around 30%, or neglects children, it's around 35%. Next slide, please. However, our listening to citizens of Uzbekistan survey has showed that both men and women believe that quotas should be enforced to ensure gender balance in public and private sector, and we have already seen that the government of Uzbekistan has done a lot of progress in this. However, there is a need now to work more with society to change these biases and stereotypes. Because also one of our experiments in Central Asia showed, when we asked about whether a woman was fairly paid or overpaid or underpaid for the same occupation that of men, in 22% of cases, the respondents were saying that women were overpaid for the same job that men was doing. However, in reality, the salary was normal for the occupation that she was doing. And in case of men, respondents were telling that men were underpaid. So we can see that there are some biases. Next slide, please. And now I would like to discuss a little bit more about or give a perspective on what we are doing as World Bank in gender equality in Uzbekistan. So gender norms, on gender norms, we are basically monitoring of the salient of gender norms in the Listening to Surveys project. Also, our SSI operations address gender norms through strengthening women's voice and participation in community-level decision-making in infrastructure projects, creating an enabling environment for economic opportunities of rural women, including capacity-building programs and providing access to finance and connecting to markets, and promoting awareness of the benefits of women's employment in cotton sector. On the GBV, gender-based violence, the World Bank supports improving gender-based violence data, quality and coverage through the statistics capacity building project. Also, World Bank supports new commitments to address discrimination and through monitoring and evaluation of new labor code, through poverty and equity global practice, and our engagement, which is called Effective Governance for Economic Development Program. And we are supporting the policies to combat harassment in the workplace. Our GSDF finance project will support establishing women's livelihoods groups in selected villages, raising the capacity of women's savings and financial literacy, developing business plans with grants and market linkage. Projects will serve as a pilot project to design national women's empowerment project. Next slide, please. And here I would like to present you some key recommendations that will be that are already a part of our country gender assessment in Uzbekistan, and which we will be launching in June. So on economic opportunity, we think that there is a need to collect gender disaggregated data and adopt gender equality strategies. Implement routine review of wages in sectors and within firms where there is evidence of pay discrimination, promote technical and vocational education and training for girls and opportunities for women in non-traditional technical specialties. Here I can add that Uzbekistan has reached a very good progress of increasing the share of women in IT sector by 11% in the last 2-3 years. But still we need to go to this direction and support these projects and policies. On the changing gender norms and confronting harmful stereotypes, our key recommendations would be review school curricula to eliminate gender stereotypes, conduct teacher trainings to set expectations for model healthy norms, and promote also healthy masculinity. With regard to voice and agency, the crucial area where everybody should focus, I think, is to collect statistical data from representative surveys and through administrative sources on domestic, sexual, and other forms of violence against women, disaggregated by age and relationship of victim and perpetrator. Another recommendation would be a fast introduction of gender-based quotas in judicial positions, police, prosecutors, and so on. With regard to human endowments, the recommendation would be judicious use of quotas and financial incentives for women and men in the field where they are underrepresented. Improving the quality of health services to pregnant women, new mothers, and infants. Thank you very much. And again, I would like to re-emphasize that World Bank is committed to promote gender equality in Uzbekistan and support the government of Uzbekistan, which has already done a lot of progress in the past 3 years, 5 years time, and to support all the efforts of the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very comprehensive presentation that took us through many aspects, including, the focus on early childhood care and education, and I'm reminded of the Tashkent Declaration and the important strategy in there on those aspects, the importance of, just transitions and putting gender equality at the heart of transitioning from digital to digitalized economies and to low carbon economies. And then the very illuminating and in some ways horrifying, can I just say, survey that, the World Bank carried out that gave us some insights into these really persistent, norms that we have in society, including around justifications for domestic violence and the need to address all of these, in an integrated way. I'm afraid we are very much over time, so my apologies for that. I don't even know if we have any time for 1 or 2 questions because we still have the important communiqué to go through. So I am just looking. It's always a shame when we don't engage the audience at the end of long presentations. So I'll just ask if anybody has one burning question in the audience. We will take that.
Министерство труда Республики Узбекистана, Адиба Нуриддинова. Во-первых, пользуясь случаем, хочу поблагодарить всех спикеров и задать один маленький вопрос. Господин Лингбек, вы поделились результативными программами достижения гендерного равенства в Швеции. Я бы хотела спросить, что из этого вы бы рекомендовали для внедрения в Узбекистане? Спасибо за вопрос.
Okay, I'm afraid I missed completely the translation of that, so I'm not sure who the question was addressed to, but...
Thank you for...
Я бы хотела спросить, что из названного вами опыта по достижению гендерного равенства, используемых в Швеции, вы рекомендовали бы для внедрения в Узбекистане?
If I could ask you to keep your answers brief as possible, please.
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for the trust that you put in me to be able to answer that. But I would say that I would like to answer that question with all the experience that we have shared with you. I'm not quite sure that I have the analysis done over Uzbekistan to be able to suggest or propose something that we have done, but I think it's a matter of putting the society into a mode to work with gender perspective. And by saying that, I have seen, and I've congrats to all your results. I think you're on a good way when you put it into policy and programs. I think that's very good. So keep up the good work with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would love to extend it to a second question, but I'm not sure that we have time. Was there? Yeah, please go ahead.
Just one thing, like a colleague from Norway say, role models are important. In Uzbekistan, Montenegro, in whole countries, successful women must be more visible. That means women in politics. You're president of Committee for Gender Equality, for example. Women from economy, that means business owners and business managers, members of management board must be more visible in media. Whenever, for example, journalists organize some debate on economic topic, he needs to call successful women from employers organization, from company, from trade union, from government, from NGO, no matter. Why? Your citizens, men and women, need to see them, to watch them, and after that, to change their things, beliefs in relation with their children. You know, one day when you change traditional norms and stereotypes regarding women's position in society, then all of us will have countries with men and women on equal position in whole part of society. Right now, on a global level, we have equal number of women and men. In my country, even 51% of women, but we have a problem because our successful women are not visible. This is the first step. All of us have laws, great laws, sub-laws, great regulation, but in practice, it is unuseful if we didn't change our attitude, beliefs, and traditional norms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rustan. I think of some very important points, I think, to close us out with, that visibility, that role modeling. Again, time, being conscious of time, I think I will just thank very much our wonderful panels, both here in the room with us and online. Also want to thank, of course, our interpreters who have helped us communicate, and our technicians as well, and to you in the audience. And I'm sorry we didn't have more time, to engage you with questions and answers. I think maybe we can give a hand to, all involved. Then perhaps I can ask Mr. Forgive me for the pronunciation, my handwriting is terrible, but Mr. Makadaliev, I think I have down, from the Vice Chairman from the Trade Union of Uzbekistan. Thank you, to present us a communique on the outcome of the international conference.
Так, спасибо большое. Я тоже хочу поблагодарить всем нашим спикерам за плодотворный труд сегодняшний. И я хочу ознакомить сейчас проектом коммюнике по итогам международной конференции «Пути достижения гендерного равенства и достойного труда в Узбекистане». И я хочу, если у вас, у наших экспертов, у наших спикеров, если будут какие-то пожелания или рекомендации, мы готовы принять эти рекомендации. 23 мая 2023 года в рамках конференции «Пути достижения гендерного равенства и достойного труда в Узбекистане» представителями трехсторонних партнеров и Республиканской комиссии по вопросам повышения роли женщин в обществе, гендерного равенства и семьи и Национальной комиссии по противодействию торговле людьми и принудительному труду были подведены промежуточные итоги предпринимаемых в стране усилий в данной области, а также обозначены приоритеты и задачи на будущее. Наряду с национальными партнерами в работе круглого стола также приняли участие руководители международных организаций, представители гражданского общества и дипломатического корпуса, аккредитованного в Республике Узбекистан. Участники обсудили актуальные вопросы перспектив развития международного сотрудничества в области продвижения принципов достойного труда, равноправия мужчин и женщин, социального благосостояния и социальной справедливости, а также разработали ключевые предложения для дальнейшего совершенствования системы обеспечения гендерного равенства и поддержки женщин. Конференция стала важной международной площадкой и предоставила широкую возможность для обсуждения и выработки предложений по обеспечению гендерного равенства и достойного труда для всех в Узбекистане. По итогам конференции участники подтвердили свою приверженность принципов равенства между женщинами и мужчинами и недопущения дискриминации в сфере труда и пришли к соглашению относительно ниже следующих положений. Гендерное равенство и расширение прав и возможностей женщин – один из важнейших факторов устойчивого развития и всеохватывающего экономического роста. Узбекистану удалось добиться ощутимого прогресса в достижении гендерного равенства, что стало результатом принятия ряда законодательных актов о равном обращении усилий по обеспечению учета гендерной проблематики, осуществлению конкретных мер, направленных на улучшение положения женщин, а также реализации стратегии достижения гендерного равенства до 2030 года. Несмотря на значительные шаги по улучшению положения женщин в сфере труда, пока еще имеет место ряд гендерных различий, с которым приходится сталкиваться женщинам. Необходимо рассмотреть возможность разработки программы преобразований в интересах гендерного равенства путем устранения коренных причин неравенства и многочисленных взаимосвязанных форм дискриминации. Имеется практическая необходимость обеспечивать адекватные, своевременные и высококачественные меры политик по защите женщин и мужчин, представляющих малообеспеченные группы населения, прежде всего в плане полного доступа к возможностям достойного трудоустройства и социальной защиты за счет инклюзивной политики, целенаправленного противодействия различным формам дискриминации. Необходимо стремиться к принятию всеохватывающей макроэкономической политики, способствующей переходу к формальной экономике, обеспечивающей женщинам и мужчинам доступ к достойной занятости, адекватной и устойчиво финансируемой социальной защите, образованию и медико-санитарным услугам, а также полноправное и равное участие женщин в экономической и политической жизни. Существенную роль играет культурное преобразование и формирование в обществе обычаев и представлений, способствующих достижению гендерного равенства и недопущению дискриминации путем коллективных действий, основанных на содержательном социальном диалоге. Необходимо дальнейшее повышение потенциала представителей государственных органов власти, судебной системы и других государственных учреждений по равенству возможностей и обращению. Необходимо рассмотреть возможность ратификации Конвенции Международной организации труда 183 и 102 в качестве базы для обеспечения равных прав в области социального обеспечения, в том числе трудоспособного населения. Участники конференции подтвердили готовность более тесно взаимодействовать с организациями системы ООН и другими международными организациями в разработке и осуществлении программ преобразования, нацеленных на достижение гендерного равенства и социальной справедливости в сфере труда. Город Ташкент, 23 мая 2023 год. Спасибо.
That is it. So I was wondering whether the director of our Moscow office had some closing words, you know, as we have reached the end of this landmark high-level conference. I think it would be nice to give you the final say.
Thank you very much. Ну, мне остается только поблагодарить всех участников. Мне показалось очень интересным сегодняшнее мероприятие, и вот наши эксперты сделали его таким интересным. Мне кажется, удалось осветить нашу тему не только с разных географических, но и с разных субстантивных точек зрения. Мы услышали мнение представителей профсоюзов, работодателей, международных организаций, в том числе наших партнеров. И, конечно, мне кажется, в каждом опыте, не только в шведском, которым, естественно, мы гордимся, можно найти что-то полезное. Поэтому в ближайшее время вместе с коллегами из других агентств мы будем работать над тем, что из этого могло бы быть интересным Узбекистану, и предложим свои рекомендации на рассмотрение наших партнеров. Как я уже говорила, продвижение гендерного равенства – часть повестки нашей страновой программы достойного труда. Но сегодняшняя дискуссия, она открывает нам новые горизонты, поэтому мы благодарим вас всех за это богатство мысли, сформулируем его и поделимся с нашими партнерами с тем, чтобы еще более точно угадать, каким образом мы можем поддержать Узбекистан в том поступательном движении, в котором он находится. Спасибо всем большое.
Так, Эка, 11 этаж. Я поняла. А там куда-то?